Hello from Boise, Idaho. This is your host, Adam Graham, bringing you the first of the special old-time radio compilations we'll be playing during our recording break. And these are old-time radio programs that center around Alexander Hamilton, America's first Secretary of the Treasury. This was one of the few times that I tried to ride a pop culture trend. In this case, the interest and popularity of Alexander Hamilton in light of the runaway success of the Broadway musical. Alas, I could not ride Lin-Manuel Miranda's coattails to podcast success. However, this was still a fun series to do, as we featured many episodes that provide some really good historic context and tell really interesting true-life stories centering around Hamilton. But we also threw in a couple of more speculative programs that I think you'll enjoy as well. So here from the spring of 2017 is our series looking at Alexander Hamilton in old-time radio.
Get ready for unique, rare, and little-known treasures from the golden age of radio. You're listening to The Amazing World of Radio with Adam Graham.
Never heard of him.
Have you ever been to Hamilton?
Huh?
Has his picture on all $10 bills.
Welcome to a special series of The Amazing World of Radio. In 2016, one of the more popular musicals was the play Hamilton, about the life of Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton. So for the next few weeks, we're going to take a listen to plays from the golden age of radio, which dealt with Hamilton, as well as some of the key events that are discussed in the play, to show how those events were portrayed in the 1940s and 50s. There are several golden age of radio programs that were dedicated to America's history, and those will be where we start out with. But there are also a few other references to Alexander Hamilton I think will be interesting. One of the oldest of those shows that focused on history was the Cavalcade of America. It was sponsored by DuPont Corporation in Delaware, and it told the story of great people in American history, as well as some lesser-known lights. But over the course of the program, the series covered most major figures in American history. That doesn't mean it did a whole lot on Alexander Hamilton. The show did a ton of episodes on the life of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and it had done an episode about the famous duel between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. But it hadn't done anything on the life of Alexander Hamilton until October the 21st of 1952. And it's important to note this was the 759th episode of Cavalcade of America. And so it was about due. So here now is Ready on the Right on the Cavalcade of America.
The DuPont Company of Wilmington, Delaware, makers of better things for better living through chemistry, presents the Cavalcade of America. Tonight's star, Jackie Cooper. Tonight's play, Ready on the Right.
One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Close those ranks. Smartly now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
April 14th, 1776. The dusty acres of Battery Park on the tip end of Manhattan Island. The sound of marching feet. A company of men that marches with snap and precision, that wheels sharply and smartly. This is the New York Provincial Company of Artillery. 68 effectives. In command, Captain Alexander Hamilton.
1, 2, 3,
Captain Hamilton, sir.
Yes, true.
May I have a word with you?
Of course. Sergeant Calkins, take the company.
Yes, sir.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Well, how do they look, Robert?
If I were George III, I should sue promptly for peace.
You wanted to speak with me?
Yes, sir. General Schuyler's on his way here.
A review?
No, this will interest you. He's determined to have the brilliant young pamphleteer, the estimable Alexander Hamilton, as his personal aide-de-camp.
Aide-de-camp? Write his orders, keep his accounts? Well, that would make me nothing more than a clerk.
Well, a fairly high-ranking clerk, considering that it carries the title of major with it.
I'm not interested.
I should think that the offer of a major's commission at the ripe old age of 19 would be enough to attract your interest.
Not mine. I want action. A field command. Nothing else.
Oh, but, Alec, you can't...
Why waste time talking about it? It's probably a rumor.
Well, that may be true, but unless I'm terribly in error, the rumor is riding this way right now in a white Charger. Now, be gentle with the General, Alec, and mind your temper.
Captain Hamilton,
Sir?
are you free this evening?
At your service, sir.
I would appreciate your visiting me, perhaps joining my family and me for supper.
Yes, sir.
I want to discuss a matter that I'm certain will be to your interest.
Be delighted, sir.
Very well. We shall expect you.
Rumor, Alec?
Did I treat the General gentle enough, Robert?
Gentle? Your use of the word sir was positively angelic. Until tomorrow, Major.
You astonish me, Captain Hamilton. Not many young men would refuse a major's commission on my staff.
Please understand, General, I'm grateful and very much honored by your proposal. But somehow, in this case, the promise of action in the field, getting into the fight, is something I can't turn my back on.
You're a very strange young man, Hamilton. Don't you think so, Betsy?
I think he is a man of mystery, Father. He appears among us suddenly from the Indies. He writes pamphlets at King's College, pamphlets with words that blaze. Then suddenly he lays down his pen and takes up the sword for liberty in these colonies.
I thank you for your penetrating biography, Miss Elizabeth. But of course you're quite mistaken. I'm no man of mystery, and I can prove it.
Prove it, Captain, how?
By confessing to a most human impulse. I am completely captivated and charmed by the General's daughter.
Captain Hamilton.
I think the captain can put his time to better use than flattery. There's a campaign to be fought.
And I intend to fight it. General Schuyler, sir. Miss Elizabeth, good night. Robert.
Yes, Alec.
I am so discouraged. Retreat, retreat, retreat. First Long Island, then White Plains. Now here we are in New Jersey. When do we stop running?
You sure that's what's bothering you?
What do you mean?
Why don't you admit it, Alec? You're dead tired. And still you go on. No sleep, constantly driving yourself. You look bad. You're sick, and I told you...
Robert. There they are. The redcoats. They're trying to cross the Raritan. Sergeant Calkins.
Yes, sir.
Ready on the right.
Ready on the right.
Corporal Baggett.
Right, sir.
Ready on the left.
Ready on the left, sir.
On the right. Fire! On the left. Fire! Cease firing. Oh, it's no good, Robert. Our shots can't reach them.
Well, what do we do?
We'll get them from the hill. We'll set cannon 1 on top. You take cannon 2. Trap them in a crossfire.
Well, can we get the guns up that hill? It's pretty steep.
Calkins and the crew and I will force it up. You take Baggett and fire on my signal. Calkins?
Yes, sir.
All right, you men, swing this gun around.
All right. Come on. See, here we are. She's going difficult, sir.
I'll help you. Come on now. Up the hill. All right, men. Cover. Harder. Harder.
Captain, what's the matter? Captain, he's fallen. He's fallen. Hey, Captain Hamilton, sir. You all right? Lieutenant Troop.
What's the matter, Calkins?
Captain, sir. He's collapsed.
Well, I'm happy to see that my patient looks a bit more like himself today.
Doctor, how long are you going to keep me in this confounded bed?
Long enough to get some skin on your bones. Don't make any mistakes about it, Captain Hamilton. You've been a mighty sick man. Time there when your fever ran higher than one of Ben Franklin's kites.
I don't intend to spend the rest of my days in this cot. I want
Is that a carriage outside?
It is.
Who is it?
It looks like we're being honored by distinguished visitors. It's General Schuyler.
Alone?
No, I believe he has his daughter with him.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's the one, Elizabeth.
Don't let them in here. I don't want to see them. I don't want any visitors.
Sorry, Captain. This is no visitor. This is a general. Just a minute.
May I come in?
Why, certainly, Miss Schuyler.
Thank you. Good day, Captain Hamilton.
Miss Schuyler?
My father will be along in a moment. He stopped to look in on some wounded militiamen in the room next to yours.
I'll be glad to see him.
If you'll excuse me, I must greet the general.
You look well.
Thank you.
We were all shocked at the news of your
My collapse?
Your illness. It was an arduous campaign, they said.
But a splendid bit of soldiering on my part, wasn't it? At the critical moment of battle, my knees fold under me, and I'm carried off the field like a sick puppy.
You exhausted your strength. It's perfectly understandable.
I did no more than the others. Why didn't they collapse? Shall I tell you the truth, Miss Schuyler? Perhaps I can write, as you once said, fine phrases, but I have weak bones. I'm a weakling.
I shall not believe it, Captain Hamilton.
It's true. I just had a dream. I saw myself in the van, leading the charge. I was with the troops where I wanted to be, in the field of action. Drums rolled and trumpets sang. I stood on the parapet. An heroic picture, don't you think? Well, now look at my parapet. A hospital cot. Captain Alexander Hamilton, felled in action. He was tired.
You talk as if you were guilty of some horrible form of treason.
I regard failure in this cause as treason.
Oh, rot.
You're entitled to your view, but leave me mine, I pray
I'll
you.
talk to you very frankly, Captain Hamilton. You're a victim of... Yes, I'll say it, your conceit. You want to do it your way. Once you lose the center of the stage, you cry out like an infant. That's ridiculous.
Look here,
Be
Miss...
quiet, I'm not finished. It's time you realized that with all your talent, you're still part of the human race. You're subject to all its frailties. You said that yourself, as I remember. The last time we met, isn't that so?
Yes, but...
But saying it, you still didn't quite believe it, did you? Well, Captain Hamilton, you are human. You're brilliant and exciting and talented, but you're human. And I'm very glad you are, as a matter of fact. Because I am too, Captain. Right now, very human.
Miss Elizabeth.
Betsy.
Betsy, do you always speak so frankly to men?
To men I lie. Yes.
Oh, Captain Hamilton.
General Schuyler, sir.
I venture that had you accepted my offer of a staff commission, I would not find you flat on your back.
Possibly.
You're well?
Much improved, sir. Much.
Good. I've come with a message to you from General Washington.
Washington?
You're ordered to his headquarters as soon as you're well enough to travel.
I'm ready now.
The general has plans for you, young man.
I hope to return to my company.
Oh, do you, sir? But I think General Washington has other plans. You are to be his aide-de-camp.
But this is impossible.
Not at all, Captain Hamilton, not at all. With General Washington, you have no choice. It is not an offer. It is a command.
Orderly. Where is Colonel Hamilton?
He's on his way across the parade ground, sir. He'll be here directly.
Good.
General Washington, sir?
Colonel, come in. Sit down.
Yes, sir.
The dispatches to General Sullivan.
Sent off an hour ago by dispatch riders, sir.
The report to Congress?
Yes, sir. I have the first draft with me.
The matter of the disaffected elements in New Jersey.
I've sent a note to the governor requesting immediate action.
Good.
Is there anything else, sir?
Well, if there is, I'm certain you've already taken care of it. You're a very efficient officer, Colonel.
Thank you, sir. But...
Yes, Colonel?
I'm very grateful for all the evidence of confidence that you've shown since my arrival, General. But I still hope that I will be returned to my company in the near future.
You are unhappy in my command?
No, sir, but I would still prefer to be in the field.
An officer fights best where he's best needed. You're needed here.
Yes, sir.
I have come upon a good habit. In the midst of pressure, harassment, confusion beyond belief, I have found a key to sanity. I merely say to my orderly, call Colonel Hamilton. I want you to know, young man, I depend upon you. That's all, Colonel. Carry on.
Betsy! Betsy!
Alec! Oh, Alec! Alec, what a wonderful surprise.
General Washington asked me to carry some dispatches to General Gates in person. I have, and, well, this is in the form of a slight detour on my way back to Morristown. I must be back in headquarters without delay.
Can't you even stop for a little while?
No. I have only time for a question. A very quick yet important question.
A question?
There are certain forms of etiquette which must be followed, I know. Letters of sanction to parents, which of course shall follow. But now, to you, this one question. Will you marry me, Betsy Schuyler?
Oh, do I have time for due consideration to so important a matter?
No.
Then you shall have your answer with directness. Yes, Colonel Hamilton, I will marry you.
Soon?
Oh, yes, very, very soon.
And now we return to our cavalcade play, Ready on the Right, starring Jackie Cooper as Alexander Hamilton. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Hamilton, aide-de-camp to General Washington, and Miss Betsy Schuyler were married in Albany on the 14th of December, 1780. The first of the new year saw Hamilton back at headquarters, back at his desk, back to the monotony and the grind of a job he detested.
Colonel Hamilton, one moment, please.
General Lafayette.
I've been most anxious to talk to you about the matter of supply.
Could it possibly wait? General Washington is waiting
Only
for me.
a minute. I have prepared a detailed list of things I will need from the commissary. Then there is the matter of powder.
We are waiting on a shipment from France.
Ah, French powder. Excellent. Colonel Hamilton.
Yes, orderly. What is it?
General Washington is calling for you.
I'll be there directly. I'm sorry, General Lafayette, but among other things, it seems that I am chef, chambermaid, butler.
No. Let us be calm.
Calm. I'm tired of it. In this chaos, you expect me to be calm?
All our tempers are on edge, Colonel. I pray you have patience.
But how much longer?
Try to understand that everyone is under a strain. Washington more than any of us. He is the most harassed man in the country. Colonel Hamilton.
Yes, I'm coming.
Colonel, that general is...
Yes, I know he is. General Washington, sir.
Colonel Hamilton, you have kept me waiting 10 minutes. I must tell you, sir, you treat me with disrespect.
I am not conscious of it, sir.
It is true. However, we'll forget the matter.
General, I regret I cannot forget it. Since you have found it necessary to reprimand me, I beg your permission to retire as your aide-de-camp.
Very well, sir. If it is your choice.
It's over now, Alex. There's no good raking over dead ashes.
But I want you to understand, Betsy, and you too, General Schuyler. It was something I did because I felt my honor was impugned.
No one questions your motives, Colonel.
Day after day, I was sinking deeper and deeper into a rut. I was nothing but a brainless parasite.
General Washington was quick to recall the affront he paid you. He took initiative to make amends.
I would regard returning to his staff as humiliation.
It's only your pride, Alex.
Only my pride. What else is a man but pride and honor?
I have heard humility spoken of as a rather estimable virtue.
I will not return to Washington's headquarters, not as his aide-de-camp. But I still will serve.
How?
I have my commission. I'm going to request a line command.
Do you think General Washington will agree to that?
He must agree. It's only justice I'm seeking.
Father, will you help Alec get the command he wishes?
No.
I'm sorry you feel that way, sir.
I'm a soldier, Colonel Hamilton. My code is very clear on one point. A soldier never questions, never argues. He follows orders.
It's a lovely night, Betsy. Come, sit here with me.
It's late.
It's never too late to look at the stars. Do you understand me, Betsy?
As much as any woman can understand a man, I think I do.
Tell me, then. What am I?
You are, above all things, a romantic. Your heart is in those stars up there. You dream of pageants and glory.
It's a man's dream, Betsy. If once, only once, I can test myself by the raw test of battle, then I would be content. I could write with fire and believe in what I write.
But the whole country believes in what you write.
I don't. Not yet. Betsy, I've written to Robert Morris in Philadelphia.
What can he do?
He's the most influential member of Congress. I've told him I'm coming to Philadelphia. He must help me get back into uniform. It's the only thing I want to do.
Colonel Hamilton, this is a matter between you and General Washington. I can't interfere.
I'm not asking for office of special favor, Mr. Morris. I'm only asking to serve the country in time of war.
You can serve the country, Colonel. Right here in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia?
Yes. We desperately need men of talent to advise Congress on matters of finance. Your letters to me outlining a plan for the creation of a national bank are proof that you have an extraordinary grasp of the situation. Stay here with me.
Mr. Morris, don't you understand? The country is at war. I want to fight.
I'm sorry, Colonel. I repeat again, I will not interfere in this matter.
I see. I've taken up too much of your time as it is. Good day. Betsy, my mind is made up. I've finished with this farce of being an officer without troops. I'm resigning my commission.
Don't do it, Alex.
What else is there left to do? Washington will never...
Someone's coming up the road. Who is it?
I don't know. Soldier, I think.
Soldier?
Probably carrying dispatches for your father.
Colonel Hamilton?
I'm Colonel Hamilton.
Message from General Washington, sir.
Washington? Let me have it.
What is it, Alec?
My orders. I'm to proceed to Yorktown and join General Lafayette.
That's what you want, Alec.
Sergeant.
Colonel?
My respects to General Washington. Tell him I am proceeding to Yorktown at once.
And that is the plan of action, gentlemen. Once we have this last redoubt in our hands, Cornwallis will be entirely surrounded, and he will have no choice but to surrender his army. And as I'm sure you know, that will mean the end of the war. Are we clear on all the details?
Yes,
right. The action on the left will be in the nature of a feint. The attack on the right will be the coup de grâce. Baron de Vieux-Ménil will have command of the left, and the command of the right, Colonel Grimard. That will be all, gentlemen.
General Lafayette, sir.
Yes.
General, hasn't there been an error in the assignment of command?
An error?
Yes. I'm senior to Colonel Grimard. As I understand it, I believe the command on the right should be mine.
Yes. Perhaps a word of explanation is due you. It is in a sense a reflection of your ability. Let me assure you of that, Colonel. But Grimard has been with me throughout the campaign. He knows precisely how I expect an operation of this kind to be conducted.
Nevertheless, General Lafayette, I am senior, and I believe I am fully qualified.
I'm sorry, but I desire that Grimard lead the attack.
May I have your permission to take the matter up personally with General Washington?
That is your privilege, of course. Naturally, I shall obey whatever orders General Washington sees fit to issue.
General Washington will see you now, sir.
Thank you. Colonel Hamilton reporting, sir.
Hamilton, sit down.
You're looking well, sir.
Am I, Colonel? I wish my feelings might correspond to my looks. I'm very tired.
General, sir, I've been wanting to say this for a long time now. I deeply regret my actions in the past. I hope you will have the goodness to charge them against my youth.
I have undergone the crises of the young myself, Colonel. And even now, how often I yearn to be back in the field with my troops. Not nailed now to a desk and smothered by detail. Let us both relegate the matter to things forgotten. How is your wife?
Very well, sir.
I'm glad to hear it.
I know she is as grateful to you as I am for consenting to my return to active duty.
I always intended to assign you to active duty, Colonel. I was merely waiting on the proper opportunity. When a vacancy occurred on General Lafayette's staff, I was only too happy to give you the assignment.
Sir, the final attack on the British position is set for tonight.
I know that. It may end the war.
General Lafayette has assigned Colonel Grimard to lead the attack. For my part, sir, I feel that the command rightfully should be mine.
Oh? On what basis?
My rank is senior to that of Colonel Grimard.
Yes, that's true. You are senior.
I appeal to your sense of justice, General Washington. I beg you to assign me the command.
Well, that is a very difficult appeal to deny.
But why is it necessary to deny it, sir? I'm not fit to lead the troops?
Of course you are. But, well, Colonel, let me explain my reluctance. This action is one of calculated danger. You are a man who has already exhibited such extraordinary genius for statecraft. I feel I'd be doing the country a disservice by exposing you to danger in this attack.
General Washington, I'm very grateful to you for saying that. But I can't stay behind while another takes upon himself the risk. You certainly understand that, General.
Yes, Colonel, I do understand that.
May I have the command, sir?
I believe you've had some experience transcribing my orders, Colonel.
Indeed, I have.
Very well. Prepare an order for General Lafayette. The command on the right goes to Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Hamilton.
Remember now, bayonets only. I don't want a musket fired. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
We'll sneak up to the redoubt Indian fashion, as close as we can get. Then watch me for the command to charge.
Right, sir.
It's the last nail in George III's coffin. Let's hammer it in tight. Ready now.
Yes.
Forward. Quiet. Quiet back there. They've seen us. They've seen us all right. Up now. Up and charge. Forward. Forward.
And so one October day, Alexander Hamilton achieved his moment of military glory. He led his troops in the field, and their charge was a success. The redoubt was captured, Cornwallis was trapped, and the war ended. Alexander Hamilton returned to his beloved Betsy and to a career of wider and greater service to his country. Once again, his pen flamed and his words inspired. From the fountain of his genius came victory in the fight for ratification of the Constitution, stabilization of the infant nation's economy, as the first Secretary of the Treasury. Yet, for this strange man, there was one great moment he remembered to the end of his life. One beyond all the honors that were his in the years that followed. That moment at Yorktown, when he commanded the right, and America won its freedom. Our thanks to Jackie Cooper and the Cavalcade players for tonight's story, Ready on the Right. And now, Bill Hamilton, speaking for the DuPont Company.
Accidents that injure people and destroy property are often caused by carelessness, and training can help prevent them. Today, the frequency of disabling accidents is 20% less than it was 15 years ago. What's responsible for this improvement? Well, for one thing, we've learned a lot about how to prevent them. Industry has contributed a great deal to better safety, and the National Safety Council, holding its 40th Annual Safety Congress in Chicago this week, has done much to make Americans safety conscious. The American worker today is safer at his job than he is away from it, and there's a good reason why. Few homes or communities can match the abundance of safety apparel, equipment, and attention to safety that industry provides. The DuPont Company has been a leader in industrial safety for many years. Out of 114 plants, laboratories, and construction projects, 75 went all through last year without a single time-losing injury. 3 of these units have held their perfect records for 22 years or more. Safety plays an important part in the creation and production of all of the DuPont Company's better things for better living through chemistry.
Tonight's DuPont Cavalcade was written by Robert Mason Pollock and Herb Tunick. Original music was composed by Arden Cornwell, conducted by Donald Voorhees. The program was directed by John Zoller. With Jackie Cooper in tonight's cast, you heard Rosemary Rice as Betsy, Arnold Moss as Schuyler, Ed Jerome as George Washington. And this is Cy Harris reminding you to be with us next week when the DuPont Cavalcade will present That Moore Girl, our star, Ann Blythe.
The DuPont Cavalcade of America came to you tonight from the Belasco Theater in New York City and is sponsored by the DuPont Company of Wilmington, Delaware, makers of better things for better living through chemistry.
Welcome back. A solid episode, and I find it fascinating how young Hamilton was when holding these sort of ranks and responsibilities. Hamilton is of such an age that we really aren't clear whether he was born in 1755 or 1757. So he could have been about 21 when the war started, but he could also have been just about 19. There is also a sense of great impatience, which, if it wasn't tied in with a bit of a noble object, would come off as more immature than it does. I also think that if you had only heard or seen Hamilton, this actually adds in a lot more detail and color in terms of what he went through in his life, which I hope we're able to do in the course of this series. Jackie Cooper does a fairly good job in this. He was actually a child actor originally. Cooper actually got nominated for an Academy Award when he was only 9 years old. And then went on to have a successful adult acting career, including playing Perry White in the 1970s Superman film. Well, that will actually be all for this week. Join us back here next week when we take a look at another important event that Hamilton touched on, and that is the U.S. Constitution. Join us back here for another episode of Cavalcade of America. Last week's show provided us some insight on the early career of Alexander Hamilton. Now we turn to one of the seminal events in Hamilton's career, and that is the drafting and passage of the United States Constitution. And we once again turn to the Cavalcade of America. Today's episode originally aired December the 8th of 1937, and is titled simply The Constitution of the United States.
The Cavalcade of America, presented by DuPont. On December 7th, 1787, Delaware led the way towards the founding of a new nation, the United States of America. Yesterday, December 7th, 12 states joined with Delaware to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the first state to ratify the Constitution of the United States. In Dover, Delaware, representatives of the 13 original states met to unveil a memorial plaque in honor of the Delaware signers of the Constitution. This evening, the Cavalcade of America presents the story of the Constitution's birth. DuPont, a company identified with the earliest days of our nation, presents the Cavalcade of America in an earnest endeavor to contribute something of permanent value and enjoyment to radio listeners, and also as a tribute to the research chemists in DuPont laboratories, whose ideals are so well expressed by the phrase, better things for better living through chemistry. As an overture, Don Voorhees and the DuPont Cavalcade Orchestra play Virginia, the march from the operetta of the same name. DuPont cavalcade moves forward. Although the Constitution of the United States has been the foundation of our country since 1787, few of us realize why or how it came into being. Let us turn back the hands of the clock to the year 1784. It is market day in the city of New York. A fleet of boats loaded with livestock, vegetables, fruits, and dairy products has sailed from the New Jersey shore of the Hudson towards the city. On one of these sailing vessels, Hobbs, a New Jersey farmer, is talking with his son George as their craft pulls ahead of the others.
Well, I guess we've outdistanced them, son.
Looks like it, Father. Did you notice old Grimes' face as we passed him?
Yeah. It's worth buying this bigger craft just to see that look on his face.
He won't get the best location this market day.
No. Ought to be a good day for business, too. This fine weather. Yeah. And the New Yorkers will have to pay what we ask. It's just a case of supply and demand. We have the farms. They have to buy. And it's easier for us to sail over from Jersey than for them to drive in from upstate.
We're well ahead of the rest now, and I know just the place we can get...
Ahoy, the barge!
I wonder if he means us. Who? That man in the rowboat.
You there, in the barge!
Seems so. You calling us, mister?
Where are you bound?
That wharf yonder.
Can't land there.
Why, we always have.
There's a new law. Passed by the Assembly last week. All boats over 12 tons must be entered and cleared at the custom house.
But we ain't foreign craft, mister. We're from Jersey.
That's why the law was made. Our state's been letting you fellas take too much of our money.
But, mister, now...
Either you head for the custom house or go back where you came from. Understand?
Well, George, I suppose we'll have to do as he says.
Yes, Father.
It's outrage, but we can't let our vegetables spoil.
Market day in New York. A crowd of farmers from New Jersey and Connecticut offering their wares to the New Yorkers. Usually a happy lot, pleased with the idea that they're outsmarting the city folk. Today, bitter at having to pay large duties as if they were foreigners. Hobbs and his son have a stall near a man from Connecticut.
Just as if we ain't Americans.
Well, never mind, Father.
Well, hey, Connecticut.
Yep.
Say, did you have to pay duty when you brought your firewood into New York?
That I did.
Say, what did we fight for? Where's this freedom they promised us? What do these New Yorkers think they are?
Still Tories, I call it.
Yeah, they want a lighthouse on our Sandy Hook. Well, I hope New Jersey makes them pay through the nose.
Say, were you able to pay the customs man?
Able to pay him? I had to pay him.
I mean, did he accept your money?
He fairly seized it. Every shilling we had.
Wouldn't accept my money.
What you mean?
I wanted hard money. Said my Connecticut paper was no good in New York. I asked him, ain't Connecticut in the United States? We did our share. Look, that lady and gentleman are trying to attract your attention.
What, this gentleman? Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir.
May we see your fowls, please?
Fowls, yes, sir. Now,
my wife has been trying to attract your attention while you and your friend were busy with your interesting argument about duties and state money.
Say, if you're making fun of me, sir...
No, decidedly not. I happened to overhear your grievance, and I sympathize with you. Perhaps I might suggest something by way of remedy.
Now, you can discuss politics after I purchase my fowl, dear.
George, you wait on the lady.
Yes, Father.
I'll tell you, I'd like...
I want to hear what this gentleman has to say. You're a New Yorker, ain't you, sir?
I'm an American first, a New Yorker second.
Well, what do you mean by that, sir?
Well, perhaps I can best explain by an example. Now, that bundle of sticks there.
This one tied together? You mean this one, sir?
Yes, that's it. May I use it as an object lesson?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Now, bound together, as the sticks are, you couldn't break them, could you?
Bound together? No, well, you ain't supposed to. You break them one at a time.
Precisely. Bound together, they're firm. Singly, they're easily broken. Now, doesn't that suggest something?
Well, I don't know. When they're together...
Our 13 states united. The same laws, the same money, free trade between them. United in fact as well as in name means a country. But 13 states, each jealous of the other, trying to stand singly, means chaos.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I have the fowl, dear, and some vegetables. Will you pay the man?
Oh, certainly, my dear. There you are, son.
Thank you.
Oh, Betsy, you'll want these delivered, won't you?
Oh, will you deliver them?
That I will, gladly.
Thank you.
If you, sir, will tell me some more about this no duties between the states and this money business, you know, I'd like to be able to talk about it like you do to some of the folks back in Jersey.
I want you to tell your friends. I wish I could spread the word to everyone in the state.
Mr. Hamilton is always glad to expound his favorite topic, a well-organized central government.
Yeah. What did you say that name was, ma'am?
Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton. Ours is the third house on the square. Come, Betsy.
Yes, sir.
I shall expect you, sir.
All right. Say, did you hear who that was, Connecticut?
Yes.
Colonel Alexander Hamilton. And he talked to me like he was nobody at all.
New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut were not the only states to set up duties. Virginia and Maryland also had their custom houses, and the advocates of a responsible central government finally persuaded these states to appoint commissioners who were to meet at Alexandria to form some plan which would regulate commerce and prevent smuggling. The commissioners met in March 1785 and decided to consult with the one man who was respected by all the states, George Washington. We find the commissioners at his home, Mount Vernon, where Alexander Hamilton is also a visitor.
It's not merely the case of Virginia and Maryland on opposite sides of the Potomac, gentlemen, but every one of our 13 states and our territory beyond the Alleghenies.
You've traveled through that country yourself, I believe, General Washington.
Yes, sir. And for a number of years, I've been working on the idea of a canal connecting the Potomac with the Ohio.
A splendid project, sir.
But if the canal is to be completed, gentlemen, Delaware and Pennsylvania also have to be consulted. I realize our people are widely separated. Merchants and fishermen in the north and east, planters in the south, farmers in the central states, trappers in the west. All have varied interests. We need some common bond, some way of making them all see their federal responsibilities.
Why, our Articles of Confederation give Congress the right to pass laws for the benefit of all the states.
Yes, but they don't give Congress power to enforce them.
But, Colonel Hamilton, our states are very jealous of their powers.
The proposition is self-evident, gentlemen. We are either a united people, or we are not. If we are afraid to trust one another under qualified powers, there is an end of union.
General Washington is right, gentlemen. And his advice is worth accepting, because we know it comes from an unselfish wish to unite the country he loves. Our states are drifting away from each other. There are too many quarrels over boundaries, duties, money, sharing the public debt. The courts and the laws are defied. It means chaos.
Have you any solution, Colonel Hamilton?
Yes, I have. With regulation of commerce as a keynote, we propose that Virginia extend invitations to all the states to send delegates to a trade convention. And perhaps at the same time, we will be able to propose some plan for more important matters.
If you mean the revision of the Articles of Confederation, Colonel Hamilton, many states will refuse to send delegates. It's a delicate subject.
However delicate the revision of the federal system may appear, gentlemen, it is a work of indispensable necessity.
So in September 1786, a convention was held in Annapolis. But so little was thought of the idea that only 5 states were represented: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Virginia. However, it resulted in the call for another convention the following May. At first, the states were slow to respond. But on May 29, 1787, the most momentous convention ever assembled in America took place in historic Independence Hall, Philadelphia. A group of the delegates are talking before the convention is called to order.
Even in the face of this surprising representation, Mr. Hamilton, I can hardly make myself believe that what we are doing is strictly legal.
There must be limits to the powers of this convention.
And I took care of that when I drew up the call for the convention, Mr. Patterson. I believe it covers every phase of the matter.
You really believe that the Articles of Confederation can be successfully revised?
No, sir. Not revised, but discarded entirely.
What, sir?
We must have a new constitution. Don't you agree, Mr. Madison?
A constitution with a centralized government, Colonel Hamilton. But won't the states rebel at the usurpation of their authority?
Whatever we may submit must be agreed upon by specially called conventions. They will be adequately protected.
Morning, Mr. Hamilton. I trust I see you well, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Wilson. Gentlemen, this is Mr. James Wilson of Pennsylvania. You know Mr. James Madison of Virginia, I think?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Patterson of New Jersey and Mr. Ellsworth of Connecticut.
How do you do? Well, gentlemen, a new set of ideas seems to have crept in since the Articles of Confederation were established. Conventions of the people or with power derived from the people weren't thought of.
Without the confidence of the people, my dear Ellsworth, no government can long subsist.
Oh, pardon me, gentlemen. I see Dr. Franklin entering the hall. I want to pay my respects.
I think it would be fitting for us all to do likewise.
But grand old gentleman, over 80, they say.
Yes, his body may not be as vigorous as formerly, but there's no finer mind in America today.
No finer in the world, Mr. Wilson.
Morning, gentlemen.
How do you do, Franklin?
Good morning, sir.
Colleague Wilson, I'm glad to see you.
And I, you, sir.
To see all these gentlemen.
Thank you.
How is the friend of the human race today?
We're grateful to have you to turn to for advice, sir.
I trust you gentlemen are not trying to turn my head with your flattery.
Oh, no. You should have been named the president of this convention, sir.
No, my friend. He's well called the savior of his country. And if I'm not mistaken, he's calling us to order. Shall we proceed?
Gentlemen, kindly be seated, please. Gentlemen, it is all too probable that no plan we propose will be adopted. Perhaps another dreadful conflict is to be sustained. If to please the people, we offer what we ourselves disapprove, how can we afterwards defend our work? Let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest can repair. The event is in the hands of God.
A number of plans were submitted, but one based on federal supremacy and another on state sovereignty were at war from the start. Prejudices and personal interests caused long and bitter debate. At one time, when it seemed that the delegates would never come to an agreement, the wise and benevolent Benjamin Franklin suggested that a recess be declared for 3 days, during which time he proposed that the members of the convention mix with and listen to members who had different viewpoints. We find a gathering of delegates discussing what has been and what must be done.
But, gentlemen, everyone admits the weakness of the Articles of Confederation. Congress is impotent to raise money. It can't impose duties. It can't even settle a quarrel between the states. We all know it, and yet we can't agree on a remedy.
The small states insist on equal representation with the large states.
That, sir, is impossible. Unless there is representation by the population, it is extremely possible that a minority would soon rule the majority.
But there's nothing to prevent two legislative branches, an upper house with equal representation of the states and a lower house with representation by population, each acting as a check on the other.
Certainly.
And an executive who would act as a check on both. But who would check the executive? We have no wish to drift into monarchy.
It could be arranged that under certain circumstances a bill could be passed over the veto of the executive. Each could act as a check on the other.
Is one head as good as, say, 3 executives?
One man would feel the responsibility more than several. And he could have a council to aid and guide him.
Our state will never submit to despotism or tyranny. It's better than anarchy.
Gentlemen, I've listened to your arguments with much interest.
Oh, Dr. Franklin, I have
May I offer a suggestion?
Oh, please do, Dr. Franklin.
Do, Dr. Franklin.
Gentlemen, we were sent here to consult, not to contend with each other. State after state has broken the Articles of Confederation. One has made a separate treaty with the Indians. Another has issued paper money with no coin behind it. What pleases the North is anathema to the South. We must prepare a constitution of compromises. Let us forget our contention, gentlemen, and think now how we may best compromise.
Much was still to be done before the work was accomplished. On the 8th of September, a committee was appointed to draw up the final document. From the 12th to the 17th, this final draft was debated by the convention. And on the 17th, it was accepted unanimously by the 12 states represented and signed by 39 delegates. But before the Constitution could become law, it had to be accepted by 9 of the 13 states. Dr. Franklin was anxious that Pennsylvania should be the first to ratify. And on September 28, 1787, in the legislature, he moved that a state convention be called. This was immediately the cause of bitter argument, which lasted for months, with no vote being taken. Early in December, a group of the convention members meet and discuss the situation.
The Constitution's all wrong. It contains no Bill of Rights.
May I reply to that, sir?
Yes, let's hear what Mr. Wilson has to say.
Yes, Wilson. Here, James Wilson.
I was a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. We discussed the Bill of Rights, but we decided it was unnecessary. When we were under English rule, such a bill was necessary because our rights came from the king. Now the rights are with the people, and any power which hasn't been given to the central government remains with them. Have you gentlemen read the preamble carefully? We, the people of the United States.
I still say that the delegates exceeded their authority in making a constitution at all.
We claimed no authority. We made a constitution which we thought necessary, and now it's laid before the states to ratify or reject as they see fit. Dr. Franklin says...
Dr. Franklin's too old to know. And most of the work was done by a lot of young men. Madison and Hamilton, King and Pinckney.
Where can a country turn if not to its youth?
Our country's too big for a central government.
Yes, here's news. News just in by the post-rider.
Thank you. Just a moment, gentlemen, till I can read it, please. Well, Pennsylvania has lost her chance to be the first to accept the Constitution. On December 7th, Delaware ratified by a unanimous vote of its state convention. So
Delaware was the first state to ratify the Constitution, and one by one the others followed. On April 30th, 1789, outside Federal Hall in New York City, a large crowd assembles to witness the inauguration of the first President of the United States. Among the onlookers are our friends, the New Jersey farmer, his son, and the man from Connecticut.
Well, hello, Connecticut.
Hi.
Come down for the excitement?
Been driving since early this morning. Seems like everybody in the States is trying to crowd into this square.
Well, it's a sight we've never seen before, nor will ever see again. The first president of the United States taking the oath of office.
Where's the ceremony to be performed?
Oh, yonder on that balcony. The one with the columns there. You can see the table there with the red cover.
Oh, yes. Never saw so many flags and banners all in one place.
Oh, it's a great sight. I was bound my boy Georgie wouldn't miss it.
Oh, you're enjoying the celebration, eh, George?
Oh, yes, sir. You should have been here this morning. General Washington was rowed across the river in a big decorated barge by 13 oarsmen, all dressed in white.
You don't say.
Yes, and there was a parade from the wharf to the hall there. Famous men from all over the country. You never heard such cheering. And I saw His Excellency almost as near as I am to you.
Yeah, they say he's been welcomed all the way from Virginia. I know they erected a triumphal arch at Trenton, and there was women, you know, singing and strewing roses in his path.
Someone's coming out on the balcony now.
That's General Washington, the tallest man there, in the dark brown suit.
Yeah, let's push our way near so we can hear something.
Yes, let's...
Excuse me, please.
Let me by here. Just a minute. Let me get in.
Who's that with him in the black robe?
That's Chancellor Livingston. He's going to administer the oath.
That's the Bible, isn't it, Father? Lying on the cushion?
Yeah, must be.
Chancellor's raising his hand.
I will repeat the presidential oath. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Do you so swear?
I, George Washington, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
This is a great day for America, Father. The greatest, son. We're a nation at last. They're raising the book, but he bows down to kiss it.
Long live George Washington, first President of the United States!
And so, by the adoption of the Constitution, the United States, no longer a loosely bound group of single units, took its place among the great nations of the world. To the valiant and far-seeing men who made it possible, we owe a debt of gratitude, and we salute them as leaders in the Cavalcade of America. And now we are pleased to welcome as our guest on this evening's DuPont Cavalcade, Honorable Richard S. Rodney, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Delaware. Judge Rodney is a descendant of George Reed, one of the original signers of the federal Constitution. He is also a collateral descendant of Caesar Rodney, whose horseback dash to Philadelphia made Delaware's vote unanimous for liberty and helped bring about the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. And Judge Rodney, you are something of an authority on the Constitution, and I understand that you are the owner of much of George Reed's correspondence. Do his letters reveal any unusual sidelights on the events of those days?
Well, many of the letters written by the statesmen of the time have been published. Yet I suppose few people realize that one man signed the Constitution twice, and another man whose signature apparently appears on the document never signed it at all.
Well, that is interesting. Well, how did it happen, Judge Rodney?
Simply that John Dickinson, another of Delaware's delegates to the convention, had to return home before the signing ceremony took place. So he wrote asking his friend George Reed to sign for him. That's how it came about that Reed signed the Constitution twice, while Dickinson, whose name appears as a signer, actually never did put his signature on it.
Thank you very much, Judge Rodney. DuPont is pleased to have had you as a guest on this program, dramatizing those stirring days in the Cavalcade of America. 12 years after George Washington was inaugurated first President of the United States, a sailing vessel, the American Eagle, dropped anchor at Newport, Rhode Island. Among its disembarking passengers were Pierre S. DuPont de Nemours and his two sons, Victor and Irénée. 2 years later, in 1802, young Irénée DuPont, encouraged by his friend Thomas Jefferson, who was then president, established a small powder mill on the banks of the Brandywine Creek near Wilmington, Delaware. Jefferson himself used DuPont powder to remove rock from the grounds of his home at Monticello, Virginia. DuPont's tiny enterprise supplied powder that enabled frontier settlers to secure food and defend themselves against wild animals and Indian raids. Later, as the nation grew, DuPont produced new types of blasting agents to help clear lands for farming, blaze trails for the highways of the future, build railroads, and deepen waterways for navigation. Still later, at the turn of the century, the DuPont Company established the Chemical Department, dedicated to development work and research. As the needs of the nation grew, this department grew, until today it is really the heart of the DuPont Company. From the Chemical Department have stemmed a variety of DuPont chemical products which contribute to the comfort and convenience of modern life. One of the first of these was coated fabrics, now used for bookbindings, luggage, and upholstery. Then came pyroxylin plastics, first employed in making toiletware, now serving in almost countless ways from toothbrush handles to safety glass. Today there are 6 DuPont plastics for various needs.
Next, the DuPont Company offered to expanding American industry a group of so-called heavy chemicals, acids, pigments, and the like, for making a great variety of useful things from wallpaper to automobile tires. About 20 years ago, DuPont helped establish an American dye-stuffs industry to produce truly color-fast dyes at low cost. Then came the man-made yarn, rayon, followed by DuPont's development of the moisture-proof, transparent wrapping material, cellulose film. And so it has gone, one forward step leading logically to another, with a steady flow of new or...
Welcome back. Well, the story does a good job showing Hamilton's role in spurring on the Constitution. I was a little disappointed they didn't discuss the Federalist Papers, but there's a limited amount of time. And also, there's also an issue of focus. The big reason why the focus is on Delaware as the first state to ratify the Constitution is because this is a Delaware-based company that sponsored the Cavalcade of America. And the family was very big in the state of Delaware. In fact, a member of the DuPont family would actually be elected the governor of the state of Delaware from 1977 to 1985. One thing that is interesting about this particular episode is where they started the issue of the Constitution and the idea that it was needed. And it was typical of Cavalcade of America in these early days of its run, where it would show an accomplishment in politics or business. It wouldn't begin with people around a table talking about how there was an issue. It would show how this issue or current state of affairs was affecting the lives of ordinary people. And then the heroes of the story would essentially be sorting out this process to the benefit of the ordinary citizen. So, and the episode also used several actual quotes and turned them into dialogue. And it never comes off as too clumsy. And so I think it was a very good episode and gives a good overview of the Constitution and its crafting. Well, we continue our look at Alexander Hamilton next week with an episode of a series other than Cavalcade of America. Well, our look at Hamilton continues with a key event, and that is the election of 1800, one of the most bitterly fought campaigns in the history of a republic. And the more you understand about the election of 1800, the more you get that our modern day elections can't quite top it, and you get a taste of that here. This comes from a show on CBS called You Are There. You Are There was a great idea where they would actually have CBS News covering the great events of history, as if they were there and it was happening live. It's a great way to experience history. I hope that you enjoy it. And here now from October the 31st of 1948 is the election of Thomas Jefferson.
This is John Daly speaking once again from the gallery overlooking the floor of the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. On this 17th day of February, 1801, the members of the House are about to try again to elect a President of the United States. Soon they will take the 36th ballot and hope this time to break the 6-day deadlock between Jefferson and Aaron Burr. Jefferson is still one state short of the required 9-state majority, and unless he's elected on this 36th ballot, the events of the past few days indicate that violence and bloodshed will descend on this infant capital. The 16 tellers appointed by the Speaker of the House will poll their states. Then they will drop the votes in the 2 ballot boxes provided by the Sergeant-at-Arms. The vote
Washington,
reported to
February 17, 1801. The House of Representatives. You are there.
CBS takes you back 147 years. It is less than a generation since the end of the revolution which established the United States of America. Now the young republic faces the threat of another revolution arising out of a deadlocked presidential election. All things are as they were then, except for one thing. When CBS is there...
You are there.
You Are There is produced and directed by Robert Louis Cheon. And Walter Hamden plays Thomas Jefferson in today's broadcast. You Are There is based on authentic historical fact and quotation. And now,
1801, the gallery of the House of Representatives and John Daly.
This dramatic deadlock has come about in spite of the fact that Jefferson received the majority of the popular vote. A group of willful men in the Federalist Party, losers in the popular vote, are still trying desperately to block the people's choice. A tie in the Electoral College through this election into the House of Representatives, and here the Federalists are still hoping to elect Aaron Burr when he was meant to be Jefferson's running mate on the successful Democratic-Republican ticket. They think of Aaron Burr a lesser evil than Thomas Jefferson. And now, on the 36th ballot, they're still pushing Burr against Jefferson for president. This confused situation. The Speaker of the House, Mr. Theodore Sedgwick, is pounding the gavel, and it looks as if the 36th ballot is about to be taken, so over to the rostrum.
The gentleman from Delaware, the Honorable James A. Bayard, has requested that we postpone the balloting for 30 minutes. Are there any objections?
Mr. Speaker, we've been confined to this hall for 6 days. We're like prisoners, eating here, sleeping here, going about in our nightcaps, never permitted to go to our hearths and homes. Why must we have further delay?
May I remind the gentleman that his colleague from Maryland is also dying here? If he can risk his life, we can risk another half hour. Are there any objections? I hear none. The request is granted. The 36th ballot will begin in 30 minutes.
And as you heard, a delay in the voting. Mr. Bayard, who asked for the postponement, is the only congressman from Delaware, and it has been rumored in this rumor-ridden capital that Alexander Hamilton, leader of the Federalists and a bitter foe of Thomas Jefferson, is nevertheless urging Bayard to switch the single vote of Delaware to Mr. Jefferson. This request from Bayard now for a postponement suggests that these rumors may be true. We shall see. Anyway, the supporters of Mr. Jefferson everywhere are grimly determined to elect the man of their choice. Around the nation, there are demonstrations and threats by armed men, Jefferson supporters, who are preparing to march on Washington. Virginia, Jefferson's home state, is probably the strongest center of pro-Jefferson feeling, so we take you now to Richmond, Virginia. Jack Walters reporting.
I'm in the executive office of Governor James Monroe. The roll of drums and the bugle you can hear are coming from the great courtyard below. The Virginia militia has been assembling down there since early this morning. I'd guess that there are about 1,000 men here, fully outfitted for a long march. Governor Monroe is here at our microphone. Governor, when will the Virginia militia march on Washington?
Upon my orders, Mr. Walter.
And can you tell me, Governor, when you will give your marching orders?
If the Federalist Party continues to plot treason, we are ready to put it down. If the political knaves of the Federalist Party succeed in their nefarious plot to elect Aaron Burr over Jefferson, we shall avenge this violation of the people's will. I've been in touch with Governor McKean of Pennsylvania. His militia, too, is fully armed and ready. We are prepared to march troops instantly upon the Capitol for the purpose not of promoting, but of preventing revolution and the shedding of a single drop of blood.
But, Governor, there are rumors that some 1,500 Democrats from Virginia and Maryland threaten to assassinate anyone who takes the presidency other than Thomas Jefferson.
This is a wild story, Mr. Walters, published no doubt by the same inflammatory Federalist paper that accused Mr. Jefferson of the Sabbath massacre of 2 million people, among them women, children, and 24,000 priests. A slight exaggeration. The Federalist bigwigs must learn that they cannot frighten the American citizen. They should have learned it when the people abolished the Federalist-inspired alien and sedition laws. Their plots against the people did not work then, and they will not work now.
Well, thank you, Governor Monroe. New York City is another stronghold of Jeffersonian supporters. We take you there now. Arthur Hannes reporting. Go ahead, Hannes.
I'm in the headquarters of the Sons of Tammany. The members of this so-called ancient order here in Manhattan are gathering in this somewhat ancient building to march on Washington. The men crowding this building, which they call the wigwam, wear Indian costumes and long, colorful feathers. They're men from the ordinary walks of life, the tradesmen, mechanics, and carpenters, the builders of this growing city. Here beside me is a man who calls himself an independent carpman, and he's a fiery speaker who just a few moments ago made a speech calling for a march on Washington. His name is Timothy Ryan. Mr. Ryan, will you tell us, does Mr. Burr know that you make speeches against him?
I care not a tinker's damn for the opinion of Aaron Burr. He's deceived us like a Judas.
Well, Mr. Ryan, can you tell us where Mr. Burr is now?
As long as I have been a member of the Sons of Tammany, I have never seen Aaron Burr step foot in the wigwam. He works through his leaders, who will not sully himself to congregate in our midst. Right now, I hear tell that he's hiding in Albany, 100 miles away. And, well, he might be to escape our wrath. We should not only march on Washington to put down the traitors, we should also march on Albany and put away Aaron Burr.
Mr. Ryan, our reports tell us that Mr. Burr is in Albany because his daughter is being married there. But you tell me, as a loyal son of Tammany, Mr. Ryan, did you not yourself vote for Aaron Burr?
Yeah, I did, God help me. But I meant him for vice president, as all the voters did. It is Jefferson that we elected for president, and well does Burr know it. We were told to write two names on our ballot, and we wrote Jefferson and Burr. And we were not told to designate who for president, who for vice president. Any fool knew if he was on it.
But Burr has also done nothing to take the first place away from Mr. Jefferson.
But he's done nothing to give it to him either.
Mr. Ryan. In any case, according to the Constitution, the House must now make the final choice.
Well,
that's the law. And you men, aren't you defying the law by your march on Washington?
Oh, defying the law, are we? Well, then I say we shall change the law. Change the Constitution. But let not the people be deprived of justice and cheated out of the man they voted for. Thanks be to the Lord that we defeated the Federalist Tories by a great majority. But if Burr is elected by the insidious plot of a band of apostates, I say, in vain have we fought for liberty. In vain have we fought the British misrule. I say upon to oppressors, on to Washington. We have declared we'll be free, and neither bully or coach will deprive us of our natural rights.
Thank you.
On to Washington.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan. While we've been reporting from here in New York, we've had word that Ken Roberts in the Capitol has succeeded in arranging an interview with Alexander Hamilton. So back to Washington and Ken Roberts.
I'm in the library of the home of Mr. Josiah Quincy, Federalist Whip. Alexander Hamilton is waiting to meet Congressman James Bayard here. And while waiting, he consented to an interview. He has, however, stepped into the drawing room at the moment. In spite of the tensions and threats of violence that are shaking the few buildings in this capital, Washington society has not abandoned its social life. Right now, there's a party going on in this splendid mansion in the wilderness. The music is coming from the drawing room. Mrs. Josiah Quincy, our hostess, is here beside me, and she has offered to tell us a little about her prominent guests. Are they all Federalists, Mrs. Quincy?
Oh, no, indeed, Mr. Roberts. Even a member of Mr. Jefferson's party can find a haven of refuge here from the torture of the miserable boarding houses in Washington.
Even Mr. Jefferson himself?
Oh, good grief, no.
Perhaps he would enjoy the excellent company here, and your wonderful canvasback duck.
Indeed, he'd be welcome. But I suspect that Mr. Jefferson would prefer to be surrounded by, shall we say, more loyal admirers at Conrad's boarding house where he resides. Moreover, I doubt that he's given to the singing of psalms. To be sure, even an atheist may love to sing psalms, but certainly not in close harmony with Federalists.
Mr. Jefferson and his minister would deny he is an atheist.
If you'll forgive me a moment, I'll close the door.
Certainly. There are many notables gracing this home today. Mr. Robert Fulton, the inventor, is in the far corner of this library. Mr. Fulton is trying to raise capital for a new invention of his, a missile that can be fired underwater from a submarine vessel. Well, Mrs. Quincy has shut the library door, and Gouverneur Morris, the senator from New York, has come into the library with her. They're chatting now, and in a moment, Mrs. Quincy should be with us again. Right now, I can see Robert Fulton thumbing through a volume of Shakespeare. The English playwright is quite a favorite in this library. As a matter of fact, anything English is preferred in the home of a Federalist. Mrs. Quincy told me a blue ribbon evening was passed here last night when the senator from Kentucky read The Merry Wives of Windsor and the first act of Hamilton to the ladies. Oh, thank you.
Meanwhile, I brought you Gouverneur Morris, but you mustn't ask him any questions about politics.
Thank you, Mrs. Quincy. And thank you, Senator Morris. Do you think, Senator, that Mr. Hamilton will persuade Bayard of Delaware to break the deadlock today by voting for Jefferson?
Oh, now, please, no embarrassing questions. Senator Morris has just ended a very weary and dangerous trip from New York. Ask the senator how he likes Washington.
Senator, how do you like Washington?
Washington's fine. I almost got lost in the woods through Maryland, but Washington's fine. We only need here houses, cellars, kitchens, scholarly men, amiable women. You, of course, my dear Mrs. Quincy, are the exquisite exception.
Thank you, Senator Morris.
And a few more trifles are needed here to possess a perfect city. In a word, this is the best city in the world to live in the future.
We hope so, Senator. But as you know, there are threats of destruction of this capital by armed militia from Virginia and Pennsylvania if Jefferson is not chosen today. Do you think Hamilton will save the capital today by saying...
You promised no questions on politics, Mr. Roberts, and I see that you're leading to a question on Hamilton again.
My dear, Washington is drunk with politics. The Federalists are like drunken men in their hatred for Jefferson. They believe that Jefferson's ideas on government are ideas of the rabble of revolutionary France. But Mr. Hamilton, alone among the Federalists, has remained sober. He believes, and I agree with him, that if the people want Jefferson, they must have him. A government must be fitted to a nation as a coat to an individual.
Thank you, Senator Gouverneur Morris. Now, the door of the library has just been opened and Mr. Hamilton has come in. He's coming toward our microphone. Mr. Hamilton, is it true that you are trying to persuade Mr. Bayard to cast his vote against Aaron Burr on the 36th ballot?
It is true that I am against the cattle line of America becoming, in fact, the man of our party. Mr. Burr is far more cunning than wise, far more dexterous than able. If Mr. Burr acts ill, we must share in the blame and disgrace.
But, Mr. Hamilton, if your pressure to defeat Burr is effective, won't you then, in fact, be electing your greatest enemy, Thomas Jefferson?
Mr. Jefferson's ideas of democracy are a danger to our country, and the prospects of our country under the evil of foreign democratic doctrines and French Jacobism are far from brilliant. The mass of the people are far from sound. Democracy is the most visionary theory. Democracy is a disease, the poison of which is most virulent.
Mr. Hamilton, to what specific ideas in the platform of Jefferson are you opposed?
Mr. Jefferson would have a government with no army, no navy. A national defense not by arms, but by embargoes, and as little government as possible from within. These are the pernicious dreams which put our country on the steep descent to ruin.
But if you are opposed to the democracy of Mr. Jefferson and opposed to the politics of Mr. Burr, how are you urging Mr. Bayard to vote?
That will be for Mr. Bayard to decide. But for heaven's sake, let not the Federalist Party be responsible for the elevation of Burr. There is a man in the world I ought to despise. It is Jefferson. But the public good must be paramount to every private consideration.
I'm afraid I'll have to take Mr. Hamilton away now, Mr. Roberts. Congressman Baird has arrived.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Not at all.
This is Ken Roberts. I return you now to John Daly in the House of Representatives.
In this committee room of the House of Representatives lies Congressman Joseph H. Nicholson of Maryland. He is the representative referred to earlier by the Speaker of the House as the man who is risking his life here. Congressman Nicholson has just come out of a coma, the result of a raging fever, which has not abated for 6 days, ever since he was carried through the blinding snowstorm of last Wednesday. Somehow, as if by a miracle, this dying man gathers his strength to inscribe the name Thomas Jefferson on a slip of paper placed in his hands by his wife. Mrs. Nicholson has just guided his feeble hand as he wrote the name for the 36th time on the forthcoming 36th ballot. Mrs. Nicholson is kneeling beside her husband's bed, supporting his head on her arms. Gently, she lays his head back on the pillow and turns now to our microphone. Mrs. Nicholson, there are some who say that by awakening your husband in his condition to vote, you take upon yourself a dread responsibility.
It is my husband's fervent plea. My wish, too. For we are both faced with a more dreadful responsibility than the life of a single patriot. We're faced with the lives, the fortunes, and the sacred honor of a whole people. Of some, I know I must ask pardon for quoting the Declaration of Independence. For there are men among us who seek to bury alive this child of freedom, though it is but 105 years old.
But in this room, ma'am, there are many Federalists who have come out of respect and admiration for the patriotism and the courage of you and your husband.
Oh, yes. It is the custom of conspirators to pay homage in the manner that the senators of Rome paid homage to Caesar. I have heard that a certain Federalist fears that my husband takes his life in his hands by his determination to remain here for the final vote, and that this Federalist would not thus expose himself for any president on earth. To this summer soldier, I say, do not fear for your life, for you are already dead. The Federalist Party has been pronounced dead by the popular vote of the people.
Mrs. Nicholson, I hope that your husband need risk his life no longer and that the Congress elects a president on this 36th ballot. And now, if you'll excuse me, Ned Kelmer reports a heated quarrel in the corridor downstairs. Go ahead, Ned Kelmer.
Matthew Lyons, Democratic congressman from Vermont, one of the two states whose vote is divided, has just accused John Brown, the Federalist congressman from Rhode Island, of attempting to bribe him into voting for Burr. Only the intervention of cooler heads kept them from coming to blows. They've calmed down a little now, but Congressman Lyons says he's willing to repeat for us his denunciation of the Federalist representative. Mr. Lyons, as you know, spent 4 months in prison last year for opposing the alien and sedition laws. Congressman Lyons, sir, what did Mr. Brown say that made you attack him?
I have been warning him, but the man is ignorant of my principles. He's an agent of the Federalist traitors.
But what did he say to you, sir?
He urged me to vote for Burr just now, for Burr, and of course I refused. And then he said to me, the scoundrel...
What did you say, sir?
Yes, sir, that's exactly what you are, sir, a scoundrel. What is it you want, Congressman Lyons, he said. Is it office? Is it money? Only say what you want, and you shall have it.
Mr. Brown, sir, have you any comment to make?
Yes, the gentleman from Vermont is a liar. Like all atheists are liars, and all the followers of Jefferson are atheists.
Now, just a moment.
They despise the truth as they despise God. And their hatred for God is equal to their hatred for those who own property.
Oh, what
Why, these Democrats, these paupers, these vagabonds and outlaws, I say take away their vote. Or they will pillage our towns and stain our soil with blood.
Ridiculous. Perfectly...
Sir, I merely want to avoid bloodshed. For if Jefferson is elected, there is scarcely a possibility that we shall escape civil war.
But, Congressman, there are some who say that if Jefferson is not elected, there will be civil war.
Well, then let it come. It is bad, but far less than anarchy or slavery.
And I say that it is the Federalist Party that means to have a monarchy rather than a republic.
Better than rabble rule.
But the people will rise up, my dear sir. They will rise up and abolish the indignities of the Federalist Party.
By rise up, sir, do you mean revolution by force?
No, sir, I do not.
That's exactly what he means,
no,
sir.
No, I most certainly do not. My father-in-law was Ethan Allen. And when his Green Mountain boys wanted to storm the jail in which I was imprisoned in order to free me, I urged them to desist and go to the polls to vote for their freedom and mine. And as you see, they voted me out of jail and into Congress. And I shall vote, express the will of my fellow citizens, and continue to cast my ballot for Thomas Jefferson.
Well, that is your privilege, sir, but it is also mine.
Thank you, Congressman Lyons and Congressman Brown. I've just been informed that Thomas Jefferson is expected at the home of Mr. James Madison. Douglas Edwards is there, so we take you to him now. Come in, Douglas Edwards.
Our hostess, Mrs. James Madison, Dolly Madison, as she's known by all, has informed us that Thomas Jefferson is on his way from his boarding house to dine here. We hope to persuade him to make a statement. To all of official Washington, this new house on F Street is more than the home of the liberal Virginian Democrat. It's a haven for tired statesmen. Most any afternoon at 4, you'll find the distinguished and talented of Washington and Europe enjoying the sumptuous dinners prepared by Dolly Madison, dinners lasting far into the night. This cordial Quakeress brings a touch of warm Virginia hospitality to Washington to thaw the February cold in the frozen mud of the Capitol. Her parties and dances and card games have won over the bitterest political foes of Jefferson. Dolly Madison is here with me now. She's wearing her famed white silk turban, draped with the large ostrich feathers. Margaret Baird Smith, who writes about Washington society, has said of Dolly Madison that she moves like a goddess and looks like a queen.
Yeah. That kind of flattery is reminiscent of my old friend Aaron Burr. Before Mr. Madison and I were married, Mr. Burr's extravagant flatteries and promises were meant to blind me to his true nature.
And what is your opinion of Mr. Burr now, Mrs. Madison?
His methods are the same in politics as they are in love, both deceiving. But let me tell you of some of our guests. They're all waiting for the outcome of the election. We have Joel Barlow, the poet of democracy. And there's a Bonaparte. And here is Mr. Merry, minister from Great Britain.
Your Excellency, are your hopes on Mr. Jefferson or Mr. Burr?
Well, His Majesty's government does not approve Mr. Jefferson's friendly views toward the Jacobins of France. My own opinion is that Mr. Jefferson has received the votes of a minority of free men and a majority of slaves.
And Mr. Burr, do you approve of him?
Mr. Burr, I do not want to seem too critical, but Mrs. Madison's food here is more like a harvest home supper than the entertainment of a statesman.
And I thought you were enjoying our hams, Ambassador.
Oh,
Forgive
but
us if our food is too democratic for you, but we have to sacrifice the delicacy of European taste for the less elegant but more liberal fashion of Virginia. This is Noah Webster, Mr. Edwards. He's a Federalist, but he enjoys the company of writers here. He's a writer himself, you know. What are you writing now, Noah?
I'm working on a compendious dictionary, my dear.
Good heavens, what sort of a dictionary is that?
A compendious, an adjective meaning briefly stated, succinct, concise, containing the substance in narrow compass, condensed, abridged, synonyms, see terse.
I see. Well, as a Federalist, Mr. Webster, will you give us your compendious opinion on Mr. Jefferson and his supporters?
They are rabble, threatening the safety of the state. From my observations, republicanism is impossible unless the poorer classes are excluded from the vote. Witness how the mass voted for Jefferson. Witness how they are now corrupting law and order, descending upon the Capitol with pikes and muskets in their hands. Savages! Primitives. Too stupid, too abject in ignorance to think rightly, and too depraved to draw honest deductions.
You might do your dictionary a service, Noah, by consulting our Vice President, Mr. Jefferson, for a more compendious definition of the people. For here he is now. Mr. Jefferson, this young man has asked if you'll make a statement to him on the election.
Well, now, I believed it my duty to be passive and silent during the present contest, lest some Federalist senators accuse me of being partial, whilst I yet preside over the Senate. But what is it, sir, that you would like to ask me?
Mr. Jefferson, do you favor or oppose the threats of imminent violence raging about this election?
Whose violence? The violence of the Federalist Party to usurp the people's will? Or the violence of revolution that keeps governments in order to remind them of the rights of the governed?
I refer, Mr. Jefferson, to the actions of the militias of Virginia and Pennsylvania. Should that violence cause civil war or revolution, would you still hold favor with it?
Yes, if the will of the majority of the voters is denied by a cabal of selfish interests bent on the destruction of democracy.
But some argue, Mr. Jefferson, that the public good will be best served by keeping the peace and avoiding violence at all costs.
I know there are men who would prefer that I sacrifice my principles for the guarantee of safety. But I say this is a threat and is itself pregnant with violence. I believe in a jealous care of the right of election by the people. I believe in a mild and safe corrective of abuses which are lopped by the sword of revolution where peaceable remedies are unprovided. Even if force must be invoked, the vital principle of republics is the absolute acquiescence in the decisions of the majority.
Mr. Jefferson, earlier in this broadcast, Alexander Hamilton derided certain aspects of your platform, particularly your belief in democracy. Would you care to comment on that?
Mr. Hamilton has a perfect right to his opinions. He has no faith in democracy. I have. I believe in, and I was elected on these principles: equal and exact justice to all men, of whatever state or persuasion, religious or political; peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none; the supremacy of the civil over the military authority; the diffusion of information, and the arraignment of all abuses at the bar of public reason. These principles form the bright constellation which has gone before us and guided our steps through an age of revolution and reformation. The wisdom of our sages and the blood of our heroes have been devoted to their attainment. They should be the creed of our political faith, the text of our civic instruction, the touchstone by which to try the services of those we trust. And should we wander from them in moments of error or alarm, let us hasten to retrace our steps and to regain the road which alone leads to peace, liberty, and safety.
Mr. Jefferson, those are things that can't be said too often, I think.
Well, that's very nice.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. We've had word that the 36th ballot has been taken in the House of Representatives, and the results are about to be announced, so back to the House and John Daly.
The 16 tellers are down there on the floor of the House checking the results of the 36th ballot now. And by the way, we tried to get Congressman Bayard of Delaware to tell us whether he would swing the single vote of his state from Mr. Burr to Mr. Jefferson, but he refuses to make any comment. Sitting up here in the gallery is Alexander Hamilton, watching the proceedings down on the floor, and the Federalist Party leader seems a weary and disillusioned man. Whether Mr. Jefferson or Mr. Burr should win this election down there on the floor, it is going to be Alexander Hamilton who is finally the loser. The congressmen in the House are silent. There's a sense of high expectancy. All eyes are on the tellers. They're comparing totals. Seem to be in agreement now as one of the tellers is writing the results on a piece of paper. But there is no indication, no sign on the face of the tellers as to whether or not the deadlock has been broken. A while ago, there were rumors that the Federalists... a teller has handed the paper now to Speaker Thomas Sedgwick. He glances at it. His face is impassive. There goes the gavel now down to the rostrum.
The results of the 36th ballot. Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, 10.
It's Jefferson by 10 states, one more than is necessary. Jefferson has been elected. The members of the House of Representatives and the spectators in the galleries have broken into wild, jubilant cheering and applause. Jefferson picked up 2 votes on that last ballot, one more than was required, and Mr. Burr lost 2. I'm going to try to find out which state broke the tie and which cast the blank vote. Perhaps it was Delaware, maybe Maryland and Vermont, but we'll soon know. We'll know in a moment as soon as we...
Washington, February 17, 1801.
We're going to have to detain...
The House of Representatives elects Thomas Jefferson, 3rd President of the United States.
You have been listening to The Election of Thomas Jefferson, another broadcast in the series You Are There, produced and directed by Robert Louis Cheon. The Election of Thomas Jefferson was written by Joseph Liss. Walter Hamden was Thomas Jefferson, and the cast included Thomas Chalmers, Carl Swenson, Joan Wetmore, Bernard Lenrow, Guy Sorrell, Ann Seymour, Eric Dressler, Walter Grisey, Doris Dalton, William Podmore, Charles Webster, Gavin Gordon, Bert Cowlin, and others. Next week...
April 9th, 1865, Lee and Grant at Appomattox. You are there.
Next this afternoon, great music comes your way from the New York Philharmonic Symphony. This evening, great comedy with Amos and Andy, now exclusively on CBS, and with Hollywood star comedian Eve Arden, your favorite schoolteacher, in Our Miss Brooks. This is CBS, where 99 million people gather every week, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. A great dramatization, and as we heard last week with Cavalcade, they took a lot of quotes from that taken directly from people and put into dialogue. It definitely gives you a flavor of the time. And as I mentioned in the opening, the rhetoric definitely at a fever pitch in this time of crisis. This type of issue would not recur again because of the passage of the 12th Amendment. Under the original system, each elector cast 2 votes, and the winner would become president and the second place finisher would be vice president. The system didn't anticipate political parties and everybody casting their vote for the same 2 people. And so the Constitution was changed, so we have our current system where the president and the vice president are elected on the same ticket. Each elector votes once for president, once for vice president. Of course, as the focus of this series on Hamilton, his role in this drama is well done, and it portrays him as someone who knew that he was going to lose, but did his best to make sure that the country got the best possible outcome out of it. Well, next week we'll return with some key events of 1804 as we shift to the most well-known incident in the long life of Alexander Hamilton, and that was his death in the duel. So be sure and join us back here next week for that. Well, we return to Cavalcade of America once again, and this time for the last time, and we focus on the event for which Alexander Hamilton has been best known for the last 200 years, and that is how he died. And this is the only surviving complete program discussing that. The original air date is July the 6th of 1942, and this one is The Gentleman from the Islands.
Starring Alfred Lunt in The Gentleman from the Islands, an original radio play on the Cavalcade of America, sponsored by the DuPont Company, maker of better things for better living through chemistry. Tonight, the Cavalcade Playhouse is especially proud to welcome for his first sponsored appearance on the air the celebrated American actor Alfred Lunt. The play he has chosen for this event tells the story of a gallant and courageous gentleman from the islands of the West Indies, whose destiny it was to secure the unity of a great republic. The gentleman's name was Alexander Hamilton. Our play, written by Robert Tallman, encompasses 24 fateful days. Days that were to bring death to Alexander Hamilton and to his country a legacy beyond price. The DuPont Company presents Alfred Lunt as Alexander Hamilton in The Gentleman from the Islands on the Cavalcade of America.
It is near midnight, the night of June 17th, the year 1804. Over the Grange, country estate of Alexander Hamilton on Manhattan Island, the moon rides high. Up the lane to the mansion house, silhouetted sharply against the moonlit shrubs, rides a man on horseback. He draws up before the portico, dismounts, and tethers his horse. In a few quick strides, he is standing before the lighted French windows of the master's study. He looks about him, then raises his crop and raps on the pane. The man inside rises from the desk to answer the door.
Who is it? I have the honor to call upon you, General Hamilton, on behalf of a friend. May I come in?
Why, Mr. Vaness, at this time of night? Come in, sir.
Thank you. I trust I do not disturb your household at this hour, sir. The friend I have the honor to wait upon is most impatient.
Well, sit down. Sit down. Cigar? Brandy?
Thank you, no. This letter, General Hamilton, if you will be so good as to read it.
Must I now?
I think you'd better.
Well, if you insist. Hand me the letter opening there, will you, sir?
At your service, General.
Thank you. Excuse me? Sit down. Sit down. Be comfortable.
Thank you. I prefer to stand.
This letter is from Aaron Burr. I recognize the hand.
That is correct, General.
But I don't understand. He seems to be agitated about some newspaper story.
You knew nothing of it?
No, sir. I never read scandal-mongering journals.
Apparently your friends do.
But this concerns something a Dr. Cooper says I said 2 years ago.
You deny having said it?
That Aaron Burr is a dangerous man not to be trusted with the reins of government?
That is only the published utterance, General Hamilton. Colonel Burr has reason to believe that in private you have sought to place him in an even more despicable character.
Mr. Vaness, despicable and more despicable is not worth the pains of distinction.
Then you accept the challenge.
All right, Colonel Burr, a letter. I don't believe in acting in haste, and I don't understand perfectly, as yet, what Colonel Burr's motive is in this affair.
It couldn't be that you are afraid to meet with Colonel Burr on the field of honor, sir?
Field of honor? I couldn't meet Aaron Burr on the field of honor. He wouldn't know where to find such a field. You may tell Colonel Burr that he can wait upon my pleasure. It is not my custom to receive wild challenges to my honor in the middle of the night.
Not so wild as you think, sir.
Then beg your friend to tell me why, after all these years of political rivalry between us, he has chosen this night to resolve the matter. I have retired from public life to all intents and purposes.
He is a man You tasted power at the age of 25, retired at 47, sir. You belittle yourself, sir.
That is my privilege, Mr. Vaness. I bid you good night, sir.
As you wish, General Hamilton. Good night, sir.
Alexander?
Betsy? James?
We didn't mean to disturb you, Father. Mother was worried and called me.
Alexander, I was certain I heard a horse in the drive. James thought he heard it, too.
That's absurd. You've been dreaming, both of you.
Who was it, Father?
Now, what have I done to deserve this, my wife and my eldest son, doubting my word?
Now, don't blame James, my dear. I made him come with me. I had such a strange feeling. Foreboding, almost. But here you are, still at your desk. Forgive me.
To tell the truth, I'm glad you came downstairs. I must go into the city tonight.
Tonight? Well, when did you decide about that?
Just now.
Father, someone was here. Why don't you want us to know about it?
Good heavens, I've been away from home before. Anyway, James is old enough to look after things. I can't bury myself here in the country, you know.
Why must you go tonight? I had dared hope you'd done with politics. The business that takes you away from us like this so abrupt.
I might have been president now, if I'd stayed in politics. Would you like that?
No. The president's a passing fancy. That was never for you. The Constitution was your work, and that's something that's good for all time.
Yes, if it sticks.
Was there ever any doubt about that?
I doubted it once. Now I don't know. That's why I'm going to the city, Betsy. I have to find out. Good night. Oh, there. Oh. Oh, wait here, old girl. I shan't be long.
Now, what in thunder? Hamilton, come in. Come in. I'll make a light.
I know the hour's late, Judge Pendleton, but...
But think nothing of it. I just dozed off in my chair, as you see. You saved me a bad case of stiff joints. That's better. Now, what brings you out at this hour?
I just had a visit from Mr. Vaness, the so-called affair of honor.
On whose behalf?
Colonel Aaron Burr.
I trust you didn't do him the honor of noticing his challenge.
Not yet.
You intend to do so?
I might.
You mustn't consider it. Burr is a deadly shot. This wouldn't be his first duel, you know.
But it would be my first duel. First performances have a way of sticking in the public mind.
Precious little comfort that would be if it were your last as well.
I'm not so sure of that, Judge Pendleton.
Why this concern over Burr, whom you've always held beneath contempt?
Because I have reason to believe there is more to his challenge than meets the eye. Don't forget, Judge Pendleton, I'm not a bad shot myself. Burr doesn't gamble for little stakes. If it were only his personal honor at stake, he would have challenged me long ago, for I have never made any secret of my contempt for the man and all he stands for.
Oh, don't forget, Hamilton, you have time and again frustrated Burr's highest ambitions. When he wanted to be president, you chose Jefferson instead. And only last month, you killed his chances of becoming governor of New York. He'd set his heart on that governor's chair.
Ah, but why did that governor's chair mean so much to him? That's what I must make sure of, Pendleton. If the answer is what I think it is...
Supposing you fought this duel, Hamilton. Supposing you killed Aaron Burr. You'd only make him a martyr.
Ah. But if Burr killed me, what then?
It's unthinkable. This whole thing is unthinkable, Hamilton. It must not happen, this duel.
Judge Pendleton, of what must happen and what must not happen, neither you nor I can be the arbiters. Tomorrow I shall see Burr's political crony Swarthout.
What good will that do?
Good. If he tells me the story I think he will, well, there is always a final decision which no man makes for himself. You are listening to Alfred Lunt in an original radio play, The Gentleman from the Islands, on the Cavalcade of America, sponsored by the DuPont Company. As our play continues, Alexander Hamilton, played by Alfred Lunt, is in the headquarters of the Society of St. Tammany, talking with one of New York's first political bosses, a gentleman by the name of Swarthout.
Let us be realistic, Mr. Swarthout. You know perfectly well that without my support, your party cannot elect Colonel Burr or anyone else to the governorship, now or ever.
Oh, now we know why you opposed Colonel Burr's election as governor. Wanted the job for yourself, eh?
I haven't said so.
Oh, come now. You're a man of the world, Hamilton. As plain as the nose on your face that you would.
Excuse me, Mr. Swarthout. I didn't want to interrupt, but the gentleman was most insistent.
What gentleman? Speak up.
Mr. Cheatham, sir.
Bring him in. Wait till Cheatham sees you here. I wager he'll...
You'll wager what, Mr. Swarthout?
Mr. Cheatham, I believe you have met General Hamilton.
We've met. I hadn't dreamed we'd meet again. Perhaps you've been dreaming of other things, Mr. Cheatham.
General Hamilton has decided to let bygones be bygones. Isn't that so, General?
I haven't said so.
No. I assure you, Mr. Cheatham, General Hamilton is only waiting to find out what we have to offer him.
Huh? Well, is that so? Gentlemen, let's come to the point. It has been suggested that the office of Governor of New York might have its attractions for me. I needn't tell you that I resigned from public office once because it didn't pay. Secretary of the Treasury of the United States of America. Couldn't make it pay. What you need is counsel, young man. Well, I'm willing to listen to your proposition, gentlemen.
Willing to listen? What do you think of that, Cheatham? Willing to listen? When we tell you what we have in store for you, you may think at first your ears have been deceiving you, Hamilton.
Well, get on with it. Are you quite certain of our ground here, Swarthout?
Mr. Cheatham, you let me handle this in my own way. Hamilton, here's the story. Our friends in New England have taken Colonel Burr into their confidence. They plan that New England and New York shall secede from the Union.
Secede from the Union? Are you serious?
Indeed, we are serious. And what's more, I am confident that the French minister has assured Colonel Burr that France will back us up with all the military power she has. And when Napoleon's agent says that...
When Napoleon's minister says that, beware, you will be his next victim.
Would that be so unpleasant? Napoleon is realistic, and so are we of the manufacturing states of this country. Jefferson is bound and determined to ruin our foreign trade, all for the sake of a vague, romantic notion he calls democracy. We can't compete with a disciplined, organized nation like Napoleon's France under such a system.
And so you propose that we should play his game, hmm?
Just so. You begin to see the possibilities, my boy?
I do. And I have just this to say. A more evil, scurrilous, rotten, treacherous scheme has never come to my attention. Swine. That's what you are. Filthy swine. May God forgive the American people for ever having allowed men like you to be born on the soil of a free nation. Do you think the unity of this vast continent is subject to the whim of your little corrupt thirst for power? I tell you it is not, and never shall be. And just how do you propose to stop us, General Hamilton? With my life, if need be. My life is a little thing compared to the future of the unity of the United States. How my name goes down in history is a matter of small moment. How this great nation survives in history means everything.
Excellent repast, my dear Mistress Hamilton. And music with the feast. I have never dined so royally.
I held out against the musicians as long as I could, such an extravagance. But Alexander would have it.
James, When you're the head of the house, I adjure you, do not follow your father's example. You see the thanks one gets for a generous gesture, from the women at least. And the women, it's they we strive to please, after all.
Don't be deceived, Father. Mother loves it. She told me so before dinner.
Now, you're too old to be carrying tales, James. But it's true, Alexander. It's wonderful to see you so full of the enjoyment of life.
Oh, one would think I had done nothing but add columns of figures for, lo, these 20 years.
And today is an exception. It's the 4th of July, you know, but no brandy. You'll be drinking toast till morning, I suppose, at the celebration in town.
I certainly hope so.
Well, I wouldn't have you miss it for the world. Aaron Burr will be there for certain, and I want everybody to see how much handsomer you look in your dress uniform.
Aaron Burr will be there.
Of course, isn't he always? Why? What's the matter?
Nothing. Just, I'll have to polish up my speech. Well, Pendleton, let's be getting on.
Good night, Father. Good night, Judge Pendleton.
Good night, my dear.
Hurry home and drink a toast to General Washington for us.
2 toasts.
A dozen.
Well, my boy, so you've decided.
Yes. You will be my second in this affair, sir.
You know I can refuse you nothing.
You remembered to bring my papers. Thank you.
You saw Swatow?
I saw 2 swine. And I smelt the filth of the pig pen the third sent his challenge from.
Have you considered you leave a wife, children?
There are things that mean even more to me, Judge Pendleton.
I see.
And another thing, you must pledge our adversaries to keep this matter secret. No one must have an inkling of it. I want my last days with my family to be happy.
Hamilton, please.
No. My mind's made up. You shall see. They will be the happiest days of my life.
Here you are, my boy. Got you home earlier than we expected.
I'm very much obliged to you, sir.
You were magnificent, Hamilton. The way you faced Burr as if nothing had happened between you at all.
Nothing has happened yet.
I spoke to Van Ness in the course of the evening. July 11th is the date. At Weehawken Heights, across the Hudson. The New Jersey laws on dueling are more liberal.
July 11th. And this is the 4th. The 5th now, 6 days. Well, good night, Judge Pendleton.
Good night. God bless you.
Why, Betsy, still up?
I found these papers here. I've been reading them.
Well, that's a woman's privilege, my dear.
Such a lot of papers. It seems as you must have been writing letters or making speeches 24 hours a day for the past 15 years. How did we ever find time to be in love with each other?
That was easy.
Thank you, sir. I'm learning all your secrets. Oh, here's one. Remember this?
The letter I wrote to old Cheatham after that scurrilous story he printed about our marriage?
I'll wager his ear is still burning.
Gall of the man. Intimating that I married you for your money.
Well, didn't you?
Of course. But that's our business.
Well, then, I'm glad I had some money.
Do you really mean that, Betsy?
What do you think?
Oh, forgive me, my dear. These old memories we've dug up, how rich they are, and how many things we've learned, especially me.
Oh, here's the letter from General Washington after you quarreled, remember?
Oh, yes, I remember. He said I kept him waiting. I stopped to talk to Lafayette on the stairs. It couldn't have been more than 2 minutes, but General Washington insisted it was 10. Naturally, I had to stand on my honor.
You had too much honor in those days. I like you better now.
Perhaps I haven't changed as much as you think, Betsy.
Why do you say that in that strange tone of voice? Alexander, what is it with you these past weeks?
Have I seemed not like myself?
Too much like yourself. Your old self, I mean. This elation. I remember you like this before when you were going to Philadelphia to stand up against your elders for a constitution you wanted.
I survived it, didn't I?
Yes, and I prayed for your safety every night. Oh, you were so outspoken. There were so many hot-headed men there, the kind that fight a duel at the drop of a hat. What is it, Alexander? Did I say something to offend you?
No. No, of course not. Just remembering old times. Too much of it for one day.
Sometimes I feel I've known you so little for all our years together. Yet I'm glad. You've never seemed so human, so alive. I've never loved you as I have these past weeks. They've been the happiest weeks of my life.
Say that again, Betsy.
The happiest weeks of my life.
You do mean it, don't you? Oh, thank you. And now I'll say good night again, my dear. I have a little writing to do before I come to bed.
Good night, my love.
Father, may I come in for a moment?
Why, James, are you up too?
Yes, I waited up. I wanted to talk to you without Mother here.
Secrets from your mother? I'm flattered.
Well, I'm preparing for my Regents examinations now to enter college, as you know, and I thought, well, I wasn't sure whether I'd be going. I mean, are you getting ready to leave us, Father?
What on earth put that idea into your head?
This letter. You left it out on the desk. I wouldn't have looked except for what it says on the top. To my sons, in the event that I should not return.
Have you showed that to your brothers?
No. I wanted to be sure what it meant.
Well, it doesn't mean anything. I was thinking of taking a fairly long trip, perhaps to Canada, naturally. If I went by boat, there's some danger.
You're lying to me, Father.
Yes, perhaps I am.
Are you going to fight a duel?
You know I don't approve of dueling.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you if you're going to fight a duel.
No, we'll put it this way. If I were, I'd want you to do as I said in that letter. Look after your mother when I'm gone.
I understand, Father. And don't worry. I won't say anything to Mother. Not till it's all over.
You're a great gentleman, James. I have no fears for you. Be a guide to your younger brothers and a comfort to your mother.
I'll do my best.
Now, good night. I've work to do. God bless you, my son.
Goodbye, Father. Good luck.
10 paces, gentlemen.
10 paces. 10 paces.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that satisfactory to you, Judge Pendleton?
That will do. Mark the place.
Now then, do I have the honor?
Very good, sir. I choose heads.
Heads it is. General Hamilton, your choice of weapons.
Thank you. This one will do.
Colonel Burr, I have the honor.
Well, let's get on with it. At your service, sir.
Stances, gentlemen.
Are you ready, Doctor?
Ready, gentlemen.
Very well, gentlemen. Present. Fire!
Oh.
Doctor. Colonel Hamilton, he's hit.
Oh, why does he hold his fire like that?
General Hamilton. General Hamilton, can you speak? Please, sir, I'm the doctor. Let me get at that wound at once. It's too late, doctor. This is a mortal wound. Looks bad. We'll have to get him across the river somewhere to a hospital. Bullet has entered his lung. Gentlemen, bring a stretcher. Over here with a stretcher. Hurry. Oh, just a moment. Before we start, if I should die before we reach the other shore, let my wife be called at once. Break it to her gently, but impress upon her that I have meant that she should understand why I have done this. The papers must be published, just as I left them. Tell her this is my legacy to her and to my country.
Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's saying. Must have been mad these last days. Why else did he hold his fire? The suicide brought on by madness.
Brought on by madness, yes. Well, whose madness? Does one argue with a dead man? For I am dead, but not half so dead as Aaron Burr shall be before ever death touches his body. God give him the strength to go on until his every intrigue shall be shown for what it is.
Shall we lift him up, Doctor? He's quiet now. Yes, gentlemen, lift him. Lift him up.
Now, wait. Oh, please, one moment.
Yes, General Hamilton.
My pistol. Be careful how you handle it. It might go off and do harm. It hasn't been fired, you know.
And now the star of tonight's cavalcade, Alfred Lunt.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It has been nearly a century and a half since Alexander Hamilton sacrificed himself that our country might continue the course charted by the founders of this republic. It is my sincere hope that in our play tonight there has been some measure of inspiration and encouragement for the gallant men and women who today are fighting to destroy the evil forces once more abroad over the earth. Thank you.
Next week on the Cavalcade of America, the distinguished character actor Dean Jagger in a new and thrilling radio play called Man of Iron, a story of John Ericsson's invention of the monitor. Don't forget, next week, Dean Jagger as John Ericsson in Man of Iron. The orchestra and musical score tonight were under the direction of Don Voorhees. This is Clayton Collier sending best wishes from DuPont.
This program came to you from New York. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Welcome back. Well, the account in this story really floored me because it was so different and had some things in there that I had not heard of. And so I'll go through what I was able to find in my research. The huge claim is in regards to Aaron Burr and an effort for New England secession. And here I think the audio drama here from Cavalcade of America does a bit more accurate job, still not completely accurate, in explaining the causes of what led Burr to the agitation of basically picking this duel. Because there was no duel after 1800 in the election. However, for not taking an active role in trying to make sure that Jefferson prevailed in the House of Representatives, Burr was really distrusted by Jefferson, who under the new system, would not be put on the ticket. So Burr was looking for another way to further his career. And so in 1802, he ran for governor of New York. And part of his support came from a faction that wanted secession from in the Northeast. There were a bunch of New Englanders who were of the mind that the New England state should leave the Union because they couldn't trust Thomas Jefferson in charge of the government. He was a Southerner, and this would get even worse once the Louisiana Purchase was agreed to, because it would force the assimilation of a lot of people who were not English by birth as were the majority of the people in New England. And so, for various reasons, they decided they wanted to secede, and they also decided they were going to support Aaron Burr for the governorship of New York. And Burr, in turn, was going to support the secession of New York from the Union. He was going to bring that about, and then New England would secede, and you would have this full secession. The only thing is, a funny thing happened on the way to the secession, and Aaron Burr lost the election. So that part is interesting. It's not something that Lin-Manuel Miranda included in the recent, in the musical. I think that doesn't fit well with the portrait of Aaron Burr he was trying to paint, which was a more sympathetic and human portrait. And while I think those elements were there, the fact is that he was kind of willing to split up the country as part of getting elected governor of New York. Though whether he would have actually followed through on that promise, who knows? This was Aaron Burr. But the Cavalcade story does go off the rails. There is no proof of the involvement of a pro-secessionist group in trying to bring about the duel. And the idea being pushed by this episode that they would support Alexander Hamilton for governor of New York, and that would somehow call off the duel, is just, complete fabrication. And you do have this kind of hagiography of St. Alexander in this story, the way that you hear it, where in fact he carefully strategized that his death at the hands of Aaron Burr would destroy the New England secessionists, and so he set out to go in the duel to have Aaron Burr kill him in order to save the Union. So Alexander Hamilton was like Obi-Wan in Star Wars, and Aaron Burr was like Darth Vader. Strike me down, Burr, and I'll be more powerful than you could ever imagine. Except that there is a lot of evidence that Alexander Hamilton didn't plan on dying in this duel. He actually had an appointment later on in the day back in New York, which obviously went unkept. And Hamilton being Hamilton, he actually sat down and he wrote about what he intended to do in the duel. He says, "I have resolved, if our interview is conducted in the usual manner, and if pleases God to give me the opportunity to reserve and throw away my first fire, and I've thought even of reserving my second fire, and thus giving a double opportunity to Colonel Burr to pause and reflect." Hamilton's intent, stated in his letters, was to fire a shot in the air and hope that Burr behaves like a gentleman and reconsiders what he's wanting to do. They also give him some lines that really don't fit who Alexander Hamilton was. Here's a hint. If you had a multi-year affair and then published a pamphlet about it, thus bringing embarrassment to your wife and family, you don't ask your wife if you've ever done anything to cause her not to trust you, as they put those words in Hamilton's mouth. Now, this had been several years, so there could have been some time for healing, forgiveness, and certainly Hamilton wasn't the same man that he'd been when he was younger, but still, that's not something he would have said. Though they actually made him look worse in a way with his, "I may be dead, but this is going to ruin Aaron Burr." He was actually quite civil in regards to his opinion of Burr when he wrote officially about the duel, saying, "It is not my design, by what I have said, to affix any odium on the conduct of Colonel Burr in this case. He doubtless has heard of adversions of mine which bore very hard upon him, and it is probable that, as usual, they were accompanied with some falsehoods. He may have supposed himself under a necessity of acting as he has done. I hope the grounds of his proceeding have been such as ought to satisfy his own conscience." So what is the deal with the way that Cavalcade of America portrayed the duel in 1942? The key thing is to remember the time. This aired about 8 months after Pearl Harbor, and the United States was getting into the thick of World War II. There was a lot of uncertainty about what was going to happen. Would we survive? Would we be bombed by the Japanese on the West Coast. Off the East Coast, American sailors were constantly menaced by German U-boats, our Navy not really even being up to speed. And Cavalcade of America kind of changed with the time. When it began in 1935, the program was known for its historical accuracy. And I think when you get into the post-war Cavalcade of Americas, there is probably more of that vigor. But I think in a couple of these war years, there was a feeling that it was important to air patriotic plays that would encourage and teach lessons to citizens, even if you had to kind of bend the history to get the lesson in. In some cases I've heard, it's really just kind of minor. Here it's much more major. And of course the show kind of speaks to the fact that many people, in order to stop the Germans and the Empire of Japan, were going to leave behind wives and children never to return. And so to those men who faced that prospect, they could hear that Alexander Hamilton decided to leave behind his wife and family in order to die to save the Union in a duel with Aaron Burr. Even though that's not what happened. Now, I should say that You Are There did do a broadcast on the Burr-Hamilton duel, but unfortunately only the first half of that broadcast survived. And I think you would have probably gotten something a bit more objective and factual because it aired after the war. But nevertheless, this is the one that survived, and that's the story that it told. Even if they'd heard the true story, it definitely affected and captured the imaginations of Americans. And that well-known fact would be the fodder for artistic works. And over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll wrap up the series by taking a look at some actually and acknowledged fictional takes on the Burr-Hamilton duel. Well, today's episode is brought to you by the support of our Patreon sponsors of the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. You can check out my podcast at greatdetectives.net and our Patreon sponsors at patreon.greatdetectives.net. Well, we're turning to fictional works that were inspired by Alexander Hamilton, and in this case, the Hamilton-Burr duel. This episode that we're going to play is one of 3 times this particular story was adapted, and I'll talk about why I chose this particular adaptation. The original air date is August the 15th of 1956, and it comes from Suspense, which was radio's most prestigious and one of its longest-lasting drama series. It began airing in 1942 and then finally signed off the air in September of 1962. It was actually the last radio series from the golden age of radio to end. The title of today's story is A Friend for Alexander.
And now, tonight's presentation of radio's outstanding theater of thrills, Suspense. Tonight, we bring you a classic short story by James Thurber. So now, starring Mr. John Daner, here is our suspense play, A Friend to Alexander.
I've taken to dreaming about Aaron Burr every night.
What for?
How do I know what for? What for, the woman says.
You do look tired, Harry.
Well, a session like I had last night is worse than no sleep at all. I should look tired.
Aaron Burr. He's a funny person to be dreaming about nowadays. I mean, with all the talk about the A-bombs and the H-bombs and the election and everything. I wish you'd go see Dr. Fox.
Oh, nonsense.
Well, maybe you need some different vitamins. Or maybe some of those new pills. Those, Starax, Aratrix, What do they call them again?
Reserpine, chlorpromazine, one of the tranquilizers?
No, it's another name.
Oh, Ataraxics.
Oh, that's it.
Ataraxics, tranquilizers, all the same thing.
Well, maybe you need some of those. They're supposed to do wonders for people.
All I need is to stop seeing Aaron Burr every time I close my eyes.
I don't see why you see him in your dreams. Where do you see him?
Oh, places, maybe Washington Square, Bowling Green, or on Broadway.
Right here in town? How odd.
Well, he lived in New York, you know. I'll be talking to a woman in a Victoria or a woman holding a white lace parasol.
Oh?
And suddenly there's Burr, bowing, smiling, and smelling like a carnation.
Harry, will you get me a cigarette, please?
Sure. He'll be telling us stories about France and getting off his insults. Here you are, Bess. Hey, when did you start smoking before breakfast?
Just hold the light where I can reach it, please.
All right.
Who is the woman in the Victoria, Harry?
What?
That you dream about?
Oh, how do I know people in dreams? They're nobody at all, or they're everybody.
You see Aaron Burr, plainly enough. I mean, he isn't nobody or everybody.
All right, but I don't know who the woman is. Maybe it's Madame Jumel or Mittens Willett or a girl I knew in high school. It's not important.
Who is Mittens Willett?
Well, she was a famous actress 75 years ago or so. She's buried in an old cemetery on 2nd Avenue.
Oh, goodness, you're so well read. It's very sad about Mittens Willett, isn't it?
Why? Why is it?
Well, I mean, she probably died young. Almost all women did in those days. Oh, Harry, please, don't pace back and forth like that.
You know what he did? I was standing talking to Alexander Hamilton, and Burr stepped up and slapped him in the face.
Alexander Hamilton? My goodness.
Yes, and then when I looked at Hamilton, who do you suppose he was?
I don't know, dear. Who was he?
He was my brother. The one who was killed by that drunk in the cemetery.
Just stand aside there, fellow.
Huh? Why? Why should I?
Perhaps you don't recognize a former officer of the Revolutionary Army and a United States Senator.
I recognize you all right, Burr. You may have been an officer, but Washington hated you. And as for winning that election for my friend's father-in-law, well, I'll bet there was something crooked about the way the ballots were counted.
More bacon, Harry? Another egg? Did the Giants win last night? It is the Giants you like, isn't it?
I wish he'd go back to France and stay there.
Who, dear?
Who do you think?
Oh, you mean Aaron Burr. Did you dream about him again? I don't see why you dream about him all the time. Don't you think you ought to take some luminol?
No. Last night he kept shoving Alexander around.
Alexander?
Hamilton. I certainly know him well enough by this time to call him by his first name. He hides behind my coattails every night, practically.
Oh, Harry, dear, you shouldn't dwell on your nightmares or whatever they are.
Ooh, that's what they are. There's no mistake about it.
We ought to get out in the country over the weekend. Why don't we go to the old Drover's Inn? You like it there.
Hamilton has not only become my brother Walter, but practically every guy I ever really liked. Well, that's just natural, I guess.
Well, of course it is, dear. Harry, I do wish you'd go to Dr. Fox.
I'm going to the zoo and feed popcorn to the rhinoceros. That makes things seem all right. For a little while, anyway. Oh, you're not going through with it, Burr?
Certainly I'm going through with it. He accepted the challenge.
But Mr. Hamilton had no intention of harming you. He just proved that.
Your friend brought this on himself, fellow. Hamilton called me, and I use his own words, a dangerous man of whom I could detail a more despicable opinion. Well, let this be a warning that Aaron Burr brooks insult from no man.
No! No, Burr! Alexander, look out! He's going to... Oh, no!
Harry!
Oh,
Harry! Dear,
No,
wake up! Wake up, dear!
Oh, Bess, find the light, please.
Harry!
Bess.
Oh, you frightened me so. Yes, there. Oh, dear. What was it?
Burr got him. He got Alexander. Oh, Bess, that dirty rotten.
Harry, let
rotten.
me hold you. It's all right, dear. It's all right. It was just another nightmare, but it's all right.
Alexander,
now.
he just fired into the air. He fired into the air and smiled at him, just like Walter, and then...
There, Harry.
Oh.
Some Nematols in the door here.
And then Burr, that fiend, he took deliberate aim. I saw him take deliberate aim, and he killed poor Alexander in cold blood.
Here, take this, Harry. Then you'll be able to go back to sleep.
Yeah. Well, I ran to Alexander, but he was dead. There was just nothing I could do.
You better take another, dear. Two won't hurt you.
And then Burr swaggered over. He's always a nasty, sneering, foppish man, and he stood over us, and he actually laughed, and I looked down at Alexander. And his face was Walter's face.
Oh, Harry.
It
Harry,
was
darling. Look, I'm going to stay here with you for the rest of the night. Everything will be all right. And we'll go and see the doctor tomorrow.
Now, just what seems to be the trouble, Mr. Andrews?
Nothing seems to be the trouble.
He has nightmares, Dr. Fox.
Oh, I see. You look a little underweight, perhaps. Are you eating well, Mr. Andrews? Getting enough exercise?
I'm not underweight. I eat the way I always have and get the same exercise.
Now, Harry, your appetite certainly isn't good in the morning.
Well, naturally not in the morning.
You see, Doctor, I think he's worried about something because he always has this same dream.
Same dream, eh?
It's about his brother Walter, who was killed in a cemetery by a drunken man. Only it isn't really about him. It's Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton.
Mm-hmm. Well, very few people are actually killed in cemeteries. Would you mind stepping into the next room, Mr. Andrews? May as well begin with the electrocardiograph and proceed with basal metabolism, cranial microcardiography. Now. And so, from what we can determine thus far, I think we can say that you're in tip-top shape, Mr. Andrews.
I make it a point to keep in shape.
I very much doubt that the lab will turn up anything. Meanwhile, we know that the heart of yours is fine, sound as a dollar.
Oh, Harry, that's wonderful news.
Even sounder, I might say. If my bent was toward economics rather than medicine. The pills I gave you will fix up any temporary difficulty you may experience in falling asleep.
Well, it wasn't the falling asleep, Dr. Fox. It was what happened after he got there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, you might call me in a week or so, Mr. Andrews.
Yeah, I'll do that. Come on, Bess.
Goodbye, Doctor, and thank you so much.
Not at all. Nice to see both of you.
Well, I hope you're satisfied. There's nothing the matter with me at all.
I'm glad your heart's so fine. He said it was fine, you know.
Well, sure, it's fine. Everything's fine.
And I was thinking, dear, now that Alexander Hamilton is dead, you won't see anything more of Aaron Burr.
And the man says, I quit because I couldn't stand the cooking odor.
Oh, Mr. Andrews, how priceless.
Yeah, I thought it was rather funny myself.
I fail to see the humor. I thought it rather coarse.
Oh, it's you, Burr.
Why don't you leave, my good man?
I'll leave after I've had a talk with you, maybe, not before.
I see. Lovely ladies, will you excuse me for a moment?
Certainly, Mr. Burr. Come, ladies.
Now, my good man.
And don't you, my good man, me, you murderer.
I presume you refer to the affair of honor in which I engaged Hamilton?
You know darn well I do.
Let me say merely that had I been called a murderer by one more nearly my equal, I should deal with him as I dealt with Hamilton. Just who are you, anyway, ubiquitous clod?
I am Henry Andrews. Harry to my friends. I'm an architect.
An architect. And you presume to converse with a soldier, a barrister, the second highest elective officer of the Republic, and a gentleman.
Well, you may be all those things except the last one, but you disobeyed your superiors in the Army. As far as I'm concerned, your kind of lawyers are on an ethical level with jockeys. You're vice president, all right enough, but you tried to double-cross Jefferson so you'd get the top job. And don't go calling yourself a gentleman, because you deliberately shot Alexander after he had fired his bullet into the air.
But I fired mine with my eyes closed.
You what?
Certainly. Or as my French friends say, certainement.
Oh, and incidentally, don't you and your French friends try any funny business with that Mexican conquest and settlement deal either. You're liable to end up in court on a charge of treason.
We were discussing my marksmanship. Let me inform you that I have upon occasion hit the ace of spades at 30 paces, blindfolded.
I'll bet.
If you were not so far beneath me, I would send my seconds to call upon you. Henceforth, be on your good behavior, fellow. I shall have one of my lackeys give you a taste of the riding crop.
More coffee, Harry? Harry!
Bess, don't! Don't do that.
But you were a million miles away.
No, I wasn't. I've been sitting right here.
Did you have another dream about that man?
Oh, I wish I'd never told you about it. Just forget it, will you?
I can't forget it with you going on this way. Harry, I think you ought to see a psychiatrist.
Oh, they're all quacks, a pack of quacks. Dr. Fox told you I was all right.
What does he do now?
What does who do now?
Aaron Burr.
Oh, well, he goes around bragging that he dueled Hamilton with his eyes closed. Furthermore, since you asked me, he jostles me at parties now.
Harry, I've simply got to get you away from here. Maybe if you slept someplace else for a few nights.
What place else?
Well, why don't we go to the country for the weekend? Let's go to Lime Rock Lodge.
Well, if we're going to the country, why don't we visit the Crowleys? You like them, don't you?
Oh, of course I do.
Bob has a pistol. And we could do a little target shooting.
Well, what do you want to shoot a pistol for? I should think you'd want to get away from that.
Yeah, sure. I just might have figured out how to get away from it.
Sister, 50 times just as fast as you can. Aha. That's the secret of a martini, boy.
Well, nobody makes them like you, Bob.
Thank you. Bess.
Thanks.
Alice.
Thank you, darling.
There you are, Harry.
Thank you, Bob.
Aha. Well, here's a go.
Down the hatch.
Cheers.
Well, how you been, boy?
Oh, never better, Bob. Never better. Gee, it's good to be here.
Oh, a nice, peaceful weekend is just what Harry needs.
We were so pleased when you called. We've simply been vegetating. The servants are getting fed up with taking care of just the two of us.
Oh, do you still have Madison and Clefito?
Oh, of course.
They are so priceless.
Yes, indeed. Been busy, Harry?
No, not too. Did a big provincial house out in Southampton. We got a 26-story office building on the boards.
Wow, and he says he hasn't been too busy.
Oh, you ought to see the building. I mean, it's going to be all bronze and acrobatic glass.
Huh?
Excuse me while I kiss my wife. She means with actinic glass and copper, dear, but I wouldn't know what to do without her.
Oh, you kids, you don't change a bit.
Yeah, married 14 years and still on a honeymoon.
It's 15, isn't it, dear?
Yep.
Well, how about refills? Can't let the eyes dilute the vermouth.
Oh, as soon as I check Clefito on dinner, dear. Oh, want to come out to the kitchen and say hello to her, Bess?
I'd love to. Don't you boys go drinking our dividends.
Oh, lots more where that came from. Oh, here you are, boy.
These are the greatest.
Thank you.
How's it with you, Bob?
Oh, couldn't be better. At least now that you're here. Kind of a lonesome grind finishing the book.
Yeah, I'll bet. You got it all buttoned up?
Oh, just about. Excuse me for bringing it up, Harry, but you feeling better about Walter now?
Oh, yeah. It was just one of those things. No use brooding about it, I guess. The guy who killed him's put away.
Sure. Oh, I know how tough it was, but now you've got the right slant on it. Yeah. Well, sir, what can we offer you in the way of a pleasant weekend?
Just what you always give us, some relaxation. The first thing I want is a good night's sleep.
Oh, well, this is the place to get it. Come on, drink up there, sir.
Sure. Hey, you still fool around with your target pistols?
Yeah, every once in a while. I got me a pip of a set, new ones, the latest.
Let's try them out tomorrow. See if you can teach me to hit a barn door or something.
Hey, yaha! That's pretty good, Harry. Come on over, take a look.
Better, huh?
Oh,
You think I'm getting the hang of it now?
sure you are. All 6 shots from the tree and 2 of them on the target yet.
Hey, they aren't that.
Well, not exactly bullseyes, but look, this one's just a shade above the outside ring.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Sure.
Bob, would you say that bullseye is about the height of a fairly short man's heart?
Well, just about.
Okay, I
Depends
want
on
to try
how short.
something. 1, 2, 3.
Well, what are you up to,
4,
boy?
5.
What's
6,
the idea?
7, 8.
What are you going to do?
9, 10.
Hey! Hey!
Any of them hit the target?
Hit the target, man. If I hadn't flattened 2 of them, it'd hit me. What do you think you're doing?
Well, isn't that the way they used to pace off in the old days when they fought duels?
Well, I guess so, but whew, you gave me a scare.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were standing
Oh,
so
that's
close.
okay. Well, come to think of it, Harry, I don't think they paced off with the gun held straight up in the air like you did. I think they kept their arm hanging, straight down.
Oh?
Yeah.
1,
Look,
2,
Harry,
3,
no, don't
4,
try it again
5,
for the love of...
6,
Hey, Harry, no,
9,
don't.
10. Any of them on target?
How can I tell if they're on the target when... Hey, look, Harry, never close your eyes. Never, never, never fire with your eyes closed.
Well, I just thought I'd try it that way.
Good Lord, man, come on, give me that gun, will you?
Well, sure, here. I guess I need more practice.
Not with me standing around. Well, come on, let's get back to the house and shake up a drink. Boy, I've got the jumps.
I sure do. I need a lot more practice.
As I so aptly put it to General Arnold at Quebec, a defensive strategy may save men, but an offensive force wins the battle.
That's why I hate you, Burr. Human lives mean nothing to you.
Observe now who says he hates me. Henry Andrews. One Henry Andrews, an architect.
Look, don't you ever push me again.
One Henry Andrews, an architect. A menial laborer.
Now, you just wait a minute. You have to go to college to be an architect, you know.
I fail to recall the subject on the curriculum at the College of New Jersey, where I matriculated.
Well, maybe they didn't teach it there, but look what College of New Jersey turned out to be. Princeton. And you're bragging.
May I remind you of your previous conversation? The one in which I discussed my unerring marksmanship?
May I remind you that you killed my friend Alexander?
A friend to Alexander. Use care, my man. The phrase might well make an epitaph.
Well, challenge me. Go ahead. I dare you. I dare you.
Harry!
I dare you, Burr. I dare you.
Please, wake up, dear. Harry!
Bess, don't shake me like that.
Darling, you were practically shouting. And it's only 4 o'clock. You wake Bob and Alice.
One Henry Andrews, an architect. That's what he calls me now.
Oh, I hoped you weren't going to dream about him anymore. I thought if I brought you up here,
It's him or me, Bess. I can't stand this forever.
Oh, neither can I, Harry.
Oh, Bess, dear, it's all right. I'm sorry. Look. Now, look, honey, you go back to sleep and forget the whole thing. It'll be daylight soon. I'm going to sneak out very quietly and get some air.
Bob?
Yes, Alice, I'm awake. I heard them.
Not again.
I'm afraid so. He's out there peppering away at that doggone target.
We better get up, Bob. Go out and get him, and I'll put on some coffee.
Yeah, he'll need some. Where's that other darn slipper? Oh, I got it.
Does he walk in his sleep or what?
Well, Bess says he never walks in his sleep.
Do you think he'll be petrified again? Madison, too, I suppose.
Tell him what you told him yesterday, that he couldn't sleep and he just went out to shoot a little.
I'm so glad to see them. But I'll be so glad when they go this afternoon.
Me too. Oh, come on here. You know, he said a funny thing when I went out to get him yesterday.
I could stand a funny thing.
I'll get him one of these nights, he said.
I don't suppose poor Bess can sleep through this.
Let's see how she could. Better knock at her door and see if she's ready for some coffee, too.
Bob, What's wrong with Harry, anyway?
Search me. I guess it's like Clothilde said. He just seems to have the shoots.
I'm sorry the weekend turned out like it did, dear.
No, it's all right. I thought it might work, too. And in a way, maybe it did work.
Well, it does seem good to be home. I mean, our own apartment and our own things, our own schedule.
Yeah, this is better. Another nightcap, Bess?
No, dear, but you go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll have one more splash and then turn in. Oh, golly, I'm tired.
Harry,
Oh.
why don't you sleep in my room tonight?
Well, you'd keep shaking me all night to keep me awake.
No, I wouldn't, dear. Only if you...
You're afraid to let me meet him.
Oh, I am afraid, Harry. Terribly afraid.
Well, why do you always think everybody else is better than I am? I can outshoot him the best day he ever lived.
That isn't what I meant about being afraid.
Furthermore, I have a modern pistol. He has to use an old-fashioned single-shot muzzle loader.
Is that quite fair, Harry?
What do I care if it's fair or not?
Oh, please don't be mad with me, Harry. Harry, I'm so unhappy.
I'm sorry, dear. Don't you worry about me, Bess. I'll be all right. I'll be fine. We'd better go up, dear. Now, please don't. Don't cry anymore.
Well, I'm trying to stop.
Sure. Now, good night kiss, darling. Everything's going to be fine. I'm ready to take care of everything now.
No matter what happens, I love you, Harry. I've loved you more every day we've had together. Kiss me again, dearest. Kiss me just once more.
Very well, Andrews. My code as a gentleman will permit no further insolence. If you insist upon ending it thus...
I do insist.
I assume your blindfold is secure.
I assume yours is.
And we have agreed upon 10 paces. Well, are you ready, fellow?
You bet I am. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7...
You're his regular physician, are you, Dr. Fox?
That's right. I examined him only 4 or 5 days ago.
So the lady said. That's why we called you in. As long as he's been under treatment within 30 days, you just sign the death certificate and our office doesn't have to bother with an autopsy.
I understand. Usual procedure.
I know it's tough on you, Mrs. Andrews, the shock and all, but it's the way I hope it happens to me when the time comes. Peaceful, quiet, quick. In my own bed. Heart just quits.
You know, it's extraordinary. His heart was sound as a dollar when I examined him. Now it's just stopped, as if he'd been shot.
They'll go that way sometimes.
Dr. Fox. Look. Harry's right hand.
Clenched a bit, Mrs. Andrews. Nothing unusual.
But the 3 bottom fingers and the thumb. Like they were gripping a handle.
Rather, yes.
And see the index finger. How it's curved. As if he were just about to press the trigger on a pistol.
Rigor mortis, Mrs. Andrews. The hands will take an odd position sometimes in rigor mortis.
Harry never even fired a shot. Aaron Burr killed him the way he killed Alexander Hamilton.
Mrs. Andrews, take it easy.
Aaron Burr shot him through the heart. I knew he would. I knew he would.
Doctor, what in the name
Oh,
of heaven?
poor Andrews. I should have done something at the time. This could even have been contributory.
I'm not too sure I follow you.
You see, she came in with her husband the other day. She spoke, and she acted most peculiarly. I should have done something.
But what is this Aaron Burr, Alexander Hamilton business?
Obsessive hallucination of hers. Mrs. Andrews very evidently suffers from one of the schizoid psychoses. Oh, yeah. I'm afraid you'll have to be committed.
Suspense, in which Mr. John Daner starred in tonight's presentation of A Friend to Alexander. Be sure to join us again when we bring you another presentation of radio's outstanding theater of thrills. That's next time on Suspense. Suspense is produced and directed in Hollywood by Anthony Ellis. You have heard A Friend to Alexander, written by James Thurber and adapted for Suspense by Fran von Hartesfeld. The music was composed and conducted by Fred Steiner. Featured in the cast were Paula Winslow, Ben Wright, Victor Rodman, Miriam Wolfe, Charlotte Lawrence, Joseph Kearns, and Larry Thor.
As national interest runs high in the conventions and the results, CBS Radio, which is broadcasting these important events, urges you to follow through, to make sure you're registered to vote next November. No matter which candidate you prefer, you are lost in making a choice unless you're registered to vote in a national election. Are you sure the rest of the voters in your family are? Make sure today. Registration laws vary from state to state. Make sure you're in the book. Stay tuned for 5 minutes of CBS News, to be followed on most of these same stations by My Son Jeep. Tonight, attend the Democratic Convention with the CBS Radio Network.
Welcome back. I thought during that first part, when he was recounting running into Aaron Burr at places, and he mentioned that he saw Aaron Burr on Broadway, I was thinking today if they said that, they wondered, well, how did you score the tickets? But it's an interesting story. It was written by James Thurber. And certainly, it's fascinating that this guy got, so caught up in using history to kind of relate to his own tragedy and his own feelings of grief. And even in some places, in that last scene with his wife, you get the idea of inferiority. And in fact, Aaron Burr kind of becomes this universal bully. This representation of all that mocks him and eats at him and all that's cruel and evil in the world. From a psychological aspect, I think it suggested that there's been some things that has been stewing beneath the surface for some time. And of course, on the historical level, it does kind of point out the big problem when what most of the public remembered about Alexander Hamilton was the duel. Is that his life, his legacy, what he accomplished kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Aaron Burr is the interesting one. Aaron Burr is the person we remember because he shot a political opponent in a duel. And when that's the focus, it kind of reduces Alexander Hamilton to nothing more than the loser of the duel, or perhaps, in this story with the view of the protagonist, a victim of a murder. Because Hamilton really isn't an everyman. Was an extraordinary person, but just viewed as the victim and somebody who got pushed around, he becomes generic. So it's an interesting way that he viewed him, and you wonder how many people held that sort of view of Hamilton. Now, I mentioned that there were other versions, and I listened to this one, and I also listened to one from 1943. There was another adaptation from later on in the 40s, but it essentially reused the script, and I like the cast in this 1940s one. Which aired August the 3rd of 1943. And the big difference is the acting was actually, I don't think it was bad in this one, but I think it was much better in the 1943 version. In the original 1943 version, Geraldine Fitzgerald played the wife, and the husband was played by Robert Young. And if you know television history, Robert Young was probably best remembered for playing the dad on Father Knows Best. However, he had a very rich career as a really well-known star of stage and radio, and they were just perfect. This version was all told in first-person narration by the wife, and really, Young does a great job playing the husband in his slow decline into madness, and you really do feel how he's lost it towards the end. And the wife, does a great job portraying the emotion, and the climactic scene is where he dies. And in it, she's come into his room, just really worried and sitting there up all night watching him. And then he begins talking aloud about fighting the duel. And she's trying to wake him, and she can't. And she can hear him making all these statements. And it's a really terrifying, distressing thing that happens as her husband is fighting this imaginary duel. There are no dream sequences shown, and so you really just get this full, complete descent into madness and just superbly performed. I chose this one because the dream sequences do kind of illuminate how people, at least the writer and the adapter, were thinking about Aaron Burr and about the Hamilton-Burr duel, which would be more interesting for our series. Plus, I think one benefit of this, the 1956 adaptation we played today, is that we get to hear more of what happened. A lot of the 1943 story was stuff that the wife told through the first-person narration, but that we didn't actually get to hear or see on stage. And here in the third-person narration, we really do get that feel. So I think both have their strengths, and if you are curious what the 1943 one sounded like, you can find it over at archive.org. Just search for Suspense, or just put in Suspense, A Friend to Alexander, and the Escape Suspense page on this story will come up with all three versions available. The first one was from August the 3rd of 1943. So that one will actually be all for today, and we will return with our finale, which will ask, what if the life of Alexander Hamilton had ended a little bit differently? You'll want to be sure and be back for that. Today's program is, as always, brought to you by the support of our Patreon supporters, patreon.greatdetectives.net, and their support of the great detectives of old-time radio. Our Hamilton miniseries concludes after having looked at what happened in the life of Hamilton, at least according to old-time radio, and a piece of fiction inspired by it to what might have happened. NBC created a series in 1953. It was called Stroke of Fate. Stroke of Fate takes some great historical events and ask what happens if things turned out just a little bit differently. And there's lots of speculation, and it's a pretty fun series, even though it didn't last all that long. It only ran for 13 weeks, but one of those asked a very relevant question to our series, and that's what if Hamilton had killed Burr? So let's go ahead and take a listen, and this one comes from October 18th of 1953.
Stroke of Fate. The fate of individuals, of nations, of the world has often hung upon accident, or upon decisions that made another way would have substantially altered the course of human events. What if fate had decreed that Julius Caesar had escaped assassination, or suppose by a stroke of fate Benedict Arnold's plot to betray America had actually succeeded? Yes, much depends upon a stroke of fate. And tonight we rewrite history as we present our conception of what might have happened if, by a stroke of fate, instead of Aaron Burr killing Alexander Hamilton in their famous duel, Hamilton had killed Burr. Let us present an imaginary account of what might have happened had Hamilton killed Burr. An account that might have been written by Hamilton's Federalist Party colleague, Rufus King, once United States Senator from Massachusetts and Minister to England.
A few minutes after 7 o'clock on the morning of July 11th, 1804, on the heights of Weehawken, New Jersey, two bitter enemies, my good friend General Alexander Hamilton, once Secretary of the Treasury, and Aaron Burr, Vice President of the United States, faced each other 10 paces apart. Then
Alexander.
Yes, my dear.
They're saying the news is all over the city. Is it true?
What news, Eliza?
That you fought a duel with Aaron Burr this morning. They say that he's dying.
Then it is a mortal wound. I had hoped that it would not.
Oh, if anything had happened to you, I don't think I could have gone on living.
Oh, my darling wife.
Alexander, how did all this happen?
There was a story in the Albany Register. It reported a private conversation of mine in which I said I thought Burr was too dangerous to be trusted with the reins of government. Burr asked for a denial.
But couldn't you have...
How could I deny it without making myself out to be either a liar or a coward? Burr demanded satisfaction. And this morning, well...
the death of Aaron Burr shocked the country. Hamilton's supporters in our Federalist Party, of which he was a leader, rose to his defense. I went to see him to offer my advice.
But I disagree with you, Rufus.
Hamilton, you must leave New York City at once.
I will not do it.
Alexander, please listen to Mr. King.
You must. You're certain to be indicted for murder.
But a duel isn't murder. We both had the same chance. Had this bullet struck me, I'd be dead instead of Burr. Why this outcry?
Burr was vice president. And Jefferson...
Oh, yes. Jefferson, the hypocrite. Wails about this great loss to our country, and he detested Burr.
Yes, but he's too good a politician to miss this chance. Jefferson thinks this is a perfect opportunity to destroy you, and with you, the Federalist Party. With one stroke, he wipes out his rival and the opposition.
Alexander, please accept Mr. King's invitation to be his guest.
Hamilton, if you have no regard for your own safety, at least think of those to whom you're dear, your children, your wife, your friends. Why, what's that?
There's a crowd of people in front of our house.
I'll speak to those ruffians. No, let me. Hang the murderer, you say. Who is this gentleman for whose blood your parched throat so thirsts? Were you not a short while ago his warmest admirers? Go, ye holiday, ye sunshine friends, ye criers of hosannas today and crucifiers tomorrow. Go hide your heads, if possible, from the contempt and detestation of every virtuous and honorable man.
Alexander, please, dear, Mr. King is right. Leave the city for now, I beg of you.
Hamilton went to Boston and waited for the storm to subside. And the indictment of murder against him for the killing of Aaron Burr was dropped. 6 months later, 1805, at Hamilton's home in New York again.
I tell you, Rufus, I cannot stay in New York. Here they still think of me as the killer of that great man, Aaron Burr. My family is scorned. I have become a liability to our party. And I cannot content myself with being a mere lawyer.
Well, what do you intend to do?
To colonize the Louisiana Territory.
What?
Jefferson bought it. I'll colonize it.
Are you serious?
Look at this map. From New Orleans, along the west of the Mississippi, as far north as Canada, and then westward. Hundreds of thousands of square miles of fertile land.
Yes, but even if you do...
I'm forming a company to finance the venture, to send men and supply them with equipment, food, and seed. I want you to help raise money for this undertaking. It can make all our fortunes.
Yes, it might, but it will take a great deal of money.
Wait. Daniel Clark in New Orleans might be the man to help us financially. He's rich and has imagination. I'm going to New Orleans to see him. Mr. Clark, gentlemen of New Orleans, that is my enterprise. Will you join me? Mr. Barstow.
General Hamilton, under ordinary circumstances, I would myself subscribe $20,000 to your venture.
And why are you hesitating, Mr. Barstow?
Because the Spaniards to the west of the Louisiana Territory are still hopeful of getting it back again. Now, suppose they do. Then what happens to the settlers we send out and to our investment?
Jefferson will never give back the Louisiana Territory.
Yes, but will he fight to keep it?
If he won't, Mr. Clark, we will.
Jefferson's a fool. Why doesn't he declare war with Spain? We've already had brushes with the Spanish soldiers near New Orleans. The frontier's wild with anger. We should attack the Spaniards and push them back from our borders.
Push them back, Mr. Clark? Why not push them out?
Well, that's the kind of talk I like to hear.
Take the Spanish territories for the United States. Texas, the Floridas. Reach out for California. The United States, bordered on the east by the Atlantic and on the west by the Pacific.
What a great conception.
Yes, but General Hamilton, Spain would send soldiers to drive us out.
Spain is weakened by her war in Europe. She can spare no men to defend her territories here.
And the few soldiers who are in the territories, we can take care of them.
Gentlemen, sooner or later we must be in possession of those lands. Now, why not now? The people within them will support us. We can send men into those Spanish lands, many men. We can give out that they were settlers. I myself will command this expedition.
General, I'm for it. I'm for it heart and soul. Gentlemen?
Gentlemen, you're the leaders of the New Orleans Volunteer Defense Corps. Now, how many of these men do you think would be with us?
Almost every one of them.
Good. Now, it must be given out that they are merely going to settle farther to the southwest, within the Louisiana Territory. We'll organize other bands of men of like mind, and they'll rendezvous here in New Orleans.
General Hamilton, this will take more money and arms than we can supply. Or your friends either, I dare say.
I think I know where I can get the arms and the money.
But Hamilton, this is madness.
Rufus, I leave New York tomorrow for the capital to see Mr. Mary, the Minister of Great Britain.
Oh, be careful, my friend. You're taking a great risk. You might find yourself accused of treason.
General Hamilton, your proposal is very interesting. Very interesting indeed.
Mr. Mary, as a British minister to this country, I'm sure that you can see it is not only interesting, but practical.
Yes. But could you enlighten me as to why Great Britain should supply you with arms and money? Of what advantage would it be to Britain if you were to seize the Spanish territories?
Anything that weakens Spain is to your advantage. Your country is at war with Spain in the Old World.
General Hamilton, do you plan to join these new lands with the Louisiana Purchase and the western states in a separate republic?
Why, no. I have no such intention.
Haven't you, General? One might consider that you'd been very badly treated by your countrymen since your unfortunate duel with Colonel Burr.
One might consider that, yes.
You're a very clever man, General Hamilton. Very clever.
If Great Britain will help me carry out my plans, your Canadian fur trade will be protected. And I can promise you other advantages.
Yes. Well, General, I will convey your proposal to London. You're a very clever man, General Hamilton. Very clever.
Sometime later, the Spanish minister to the United States paid a formal and angry visit to President Jefferson.
Mr. President, I wish to protest this outrage, this invasion of our territory by American armed bands led by this madman Hamilton. I am informed that the flag of the United States now waves in Texas, that shiploads of armed men landed in Monterrey, and that they now claim all the land on the Pacific coast for your country. Hamilton says everything between Texas and California belongs to the United States. Mr. Jefferson, what these men have taken must be given up, and General Hamilton must receive a more severe punishment so that no other adventurer should have the desire to imitate him.
The representations of the Spanish minister aroused Jefferson to a fury. The president issued a proclamation in which he charged Alexander Hamilton with treason to the United States. We received this proclamation at our headquarters in Texas.
So I am to return to Washington to face a trial for treason. Treason. Tom Jefferson would have me hanged, would he? You notice in this proclamation he says nothing about returning these lands to Spain, which, as he says, I seized without knowledge of our government.
If you go back now, they will hang you. To them, you're still the man who killed Aaron Burr.
I've got to clear myself of this charge of treason. Besides, I miss Eliza and my family. And as for being hanged, Rufus, I have great confidence in the ability of my chief attorney.
Your chief attorney? Oh. Yourself. Alexander Hamilton returned east and was indicted on a charge of treason. Pending his trial before Chief Justice John Marshall, he was confined to a building on the outskirts of Washington.
Eliza, my dear.
Alexander.
What? Another basket of food?
And it includes 2 bottles of your favorite claret.
Thank you. But you must think I'm being starved here. I see you have the newspapers I've requested.
You should not read them. They say such dreadful things about you.
This one already has me convicted, hanged, and you a widow. It also calls me a liar, a double-dyed traitor.
How can anyone believe you to be a traitor? Have they forgotten what you've done for this country?
Oh, my dear, I wish you were trying this case. The Chronicle. What's this? News has reached us of a letter written by the traitor Alexander Hamilton to the effect that he desired to set up a republic in the West with himself as the ruler.
But that couldn't have been your plan, Alexander.
Of course not. This is most unfortunate.
This will hurt you.
Perhaps, but... No. We'll show them. By heaven, we'll show them.
You will please continue, Mr. Hay. Your Honor, and gentlemen of the jury, the government will prove that General Alexander Hamilton, who at one time bore a name honored by all his countrymen, this man who killed our vice president, fell to becoming an unscrupulous adventurer, conspired and seized land from a nation with whom we are at peace, with the foul purpose of also seizing the Louisiana Territory and subverting some of our western states to secede and to join him in setting up a new nation with himself as president. Any further disturbance? I shall order the courtroom to be cleared. You may continue, General Hamilton.
Among other matters, I am accused by the prosecutor of seizing the territory of a friendly nation, when the fact is, at that time we were engaged on our frontiers in an undeclared war with Spain. We had been attacked, and the best way to forestall such attacks was to seize the territory of the aggressor. We did this for love of our country and for no other reason. Take note. that the United States government has not as yet returned to Spain those territories we won. If you convict me, you must return those lands to Spain. For you cannot call what I did a crime and then enjoy the fruits of that crime.
While General Hamilton is still on the stand, I wish to introduce as evidence a copy of a letter which has come into our possession, written by Mr. Merry, the British minister to the United States, and addressed to Mr. William Pitt, the British Prime Minister.
Mr. Hay, do you have Mr. Merry in court prepared to testify?
No, Your Honor, we have not.
Then you should know this letter cannot be admitted as evidence.
Your Honor, the contents of that letter have become public knowledge and have indeed led to prejudging this case against me. If it please the court, I request permission to make a statement concerning it.
As you please, sir.
Gentlemen of the jury, at no time did I ever inform Mr. Merry that I intended to set up a new republic, or that we would attempt to seize the Louisiana Territory by force, or try to engage the Western states to secede and join such a republic or monarchy.
Mr. Merry states in his letter that is exactly his understanding of what you intended to do.
I am not responsible for the British minister's understanding, or lack of it.
General Hamilton, is it your contention that the British government is so charitable as to give you money and arms without her receiving far greater benefits than merely having an enemy deprived of some of her territory?
I did mention trade advantages, which I felt sure this government would grant to England and Canada.
General Hamilton, I accuse you of seizing the Spanish territories and conspiring to seize territory of the United States for the purpose of joining Canada and extending the frontiers of the British Empire.
That, sir, is a lie.
What do you expect me to do, General? Call you out for that remark so that you, a practiced duelist,
I am not on trial for the shooting of Aaron Burr in a duel.
I did not say that you killed the Vice President of the United States.
Your Honor!
Hello, Rufus.
Hamilton, you sound discouraged.
Tired. A month of this trial. More than a month of being confined to this prison.
Well, tomorrow will be the end of it.
And of me.
Not one witness that they've called has given the slightest confirmation of their charge against you.
But that jury, I have a feeling about juries, Rufus. It's a hanging jury.
Oh, I don't agree with you.
I've been prejudged. Convicted before I was even tried. They cannot forget Burr.
Don't let Mrs. Hamilton see you're dispirited.
Eliza.
Alexander, my dear.
Now, what have you in that basket? A couple more bottles of claret?
Only one, Alexander, which you may share with Mr. King. You'll have all the claret you desire when we go home.
Home. It has a good sound, hasn't it?
Here's a message from your friend, Mr. Pinckney. He asked me to give it to you.
Thank you, my dear. Well, look at this, Rufus. Maybe we're not beaten yet.
Gentlemen of the jury, do you think it's possible that I, who was General Washington's aide, who helped fashion the Constitution, which is the framework of the very government I am accused of betraying, do you think it's possible I could commit such an act of treason? I am accused of intending to establish a new republic or monarchy and of uniting it with Canada. If this were my intention, how strange it is that the American flag now waves over land we fought for and won. And now, as I learned from a message yesterday, there's a plan in Congress to indemnify Spain for this territory we now occupy. We will buy it. Texas, the Floridas, California, and all the land on the Pacific. So without question, it will be forever ours.
Quiet or I'll clear the courtroom. Please continue, Mr. Hamilton.
I have little more to say. My only crime is that I visioned the United States stretching her borders and reaching to the Pacific Ocean. I envisioned her taking these lands now, not going to war over them later. If it is a crime to wish my country strong, to follow the glorious path that destiny has mapped for her, then I stand convicted and will gladly hang.
The jury found Hamilton not guilty. After the trial, Hamilton returned to his home in New York, where a crowd gathered outside and clamored for him to address them. As he finished speaking,
Thank you, my friends. Thank you.
They're glad you were acquitted, Alexander. Truly glad.
The same crowd that wanted to mob me after I shot Burr.
well, that is all forgotten. You're a popular man, my friend. What are your plans now?
To rebuild our party first. Then, well, Tom Jefferson's term runs out in about a year. I believe this country needs a really strong president.
You are listening to another episode in our new series, Stroke of Fate, in which we show how fateful decisions and accidents might have changed history. Now, it is our pleasure to introduce our history consultant on tonight's program, the noted historian, author of The Presidency, The New World, and Lincoln, a Picture Story of His Life, Mr. Stephen Laurent.
As we know, it was Alexander Hamilton who lost his life in that duel, and not Aaron Burr. But suppose fate had willed it otherwise. Suppose it had been Hamilton's bullet that killed Burr. Then tonight's story might have been an actual one instead of a flight of imagination. Hamilton could easily have been embroiled in such a plan. A few years before the duel, when he was Inspector General and in command of the army, he urged that the United States should take Florida, Louisiana, and other Spanish lands. At that time, he wrote letters to the adventurer, General Miranda, who asked for English and American help to liberate the South American continent. And Hamilton wished to be the man to take from Spain all her domains in the New World. Had he succeeded, he would have probably become president following Jefferson in 1809. As such, he would have advocated a strong federal government. Under him, the country would have been governed by the well-to-do, the aristocrats. And American democracy as we know it would never have come about. We might never have had presidents like Andrew Jackson or Abraham Lincoln. But we must never forget Alexander Hamilton's enormous contributions. A soldier in the Revolution, a secretary of the Treasury. Aaron Burr's bullet snuffed out a life whose greatness will always be remembered.
Thank you, Mr. Laurent. We invite you to listen again next week to hear what might have happened
if, by a stroke of fate, Marie Antoinette, Queen of France, had escaped the guillotine.
Featured in tonight's Stroke of Fate presentation were John Barragray as Alexander Hamilton, Maurice Wells as Rufus King, Louis Van Rooten as George Hay. Others in the cast were Marie Stroud, Wendell Holmes, Humphrey Davis, John Stanley, and William Griffiths. This is Lionel Rico speaking. Stroke of Fate is produced by Morton Lester Lewis, conceived and written by Mort Lewis, and directed by Fred Way. This is the NBC Radio Network.
Welcome back. I have to admit that for a few minutes I thought that this might be like an opposite sketch, where it was just taking everything that had happened in Burr's life and assigning it to Hamilton. But they did have some basis, which I think is good. This scenario is really, really unlikely just because of Hamilton's opposition to the very concept of dueling. So to imagine him going ahead and killing Burr in the duel isn't very likely. And I think that the treatment of Hamilton, if he had killed Burr, would probably not be quite as severe. Because the one thing you get when you read the correspondence is the idea that Burr was really pushing for this confrontation and just trying to find some way to goad Hamilton into agreeing to this duel. It was all Burr's idea, and I can imagine some folks being like, well, he kind of asked for it. But the rest of the story has a lot of probability. I do wonder if they stretch the conclusion too far by speculating that Hamilton's rise to the presidency would end up stopping Andrew Jackson from coming to the presidency 20 years later. That's a long time, and there are, of course, many questions to ask because under this scenario, there is no Mexican War. How does this impact the coming of the Civil War and the whole issue of slavery? And I guess on a less serious note, since there would not be a Battle of the Alamo, what would we remember instead? So a lot of interesting questions raised by this story. And certainly it would have changed the direction of the whole country. Though, in many ways, Alexander Hamilton already had done that. And as the musical shows, and I think these episodes that we brought you, Hamilton was a man with an interesting life who contributed so much to our country and remains a great and still controversial figure to this day. So I was glad to bring you the Golden Age of Radio's look at Hamilton, and we're going to go ahead and be signing off on the amazing world of radio. You won't hear from us again until summertime, and the program will be of the choosing of our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become one of them, go over to patreon.greatdetectives.net. But from Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.